Good evening. The Design Review Board 1 public meeting of July 12, 2012 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker's cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be called to present a case or speak on a specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current DRB agendas are available by calling our DRB hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the DRB decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at their discretion. Roll call. Mr. Ellis.
Present.
Mr. Insua is absent. Ms. Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Simonian.
Present.
Mr. Yu, absent. A report regarding the posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on July 5th, 2012. Oral communications. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on a item not a part of the agenda? Any cards?
There are none.
Okay. Then that leads us down to the review calendar. At this point, we don't have any staff announcements, and we will start with the DRB case on Fisher.
Great. Mr. Dong.
The first item before you is case number 1 PDR 1210551-A, located at 526 Fisher Street. The applicant is proposing to construct a 1,520 square foot one-story addition and a new two-car garage at the front of an existing single-family residence located within the R3050 moderate density residential zone. The subject site has a slight slope from the sidewalk, then it leads to a flat path throughout. The lot is irregularly shaped and it's located near the intersection of Fisher and Maple Avenue. The property was developed in 1930 with a single-family residence and a one-car detached garage. The existing house is 880 square feet, and both buildings are set back towards the rear of the property, therefore leaving all the developable open space at the front of the property. The subject lot is 7,500 square feet. The applicant proposing to add to the front of the existing residence and retain the existing one-car garage at the back. Because of the existing site planning of the existing residence and the garage, the proposed location of the addition is sensible and is appropriate, since it will also bring the subject property into conformance with adjoining properties and other development in the neighborhood, in that all other properties are developed closer to the street setback than the subject property in its existing state. Because this is a one-story addition, the concern for mass and scale is not as great as if it's a two-story development. However, the applicant has taken the appropriate measure to address the potential impact related to mass and scale. Therefore, the project has includes modulating the walls, stepping the roof between the residence and the garage, and providing various sizes for the roof pitch. In regards to the building design and detail, the building reflects a traditional style architecture and will be clad in stucco and will feature a two-piece barrel tile roof. All existing windows will be replaced, and the new windows will be vinyl, which will be installed recessed and will be provided with wood seal and trim and will be painted brown. These windows will be a combination of fixed and single hung. However, they are there are a handful, well, actually 4 bathroom windows that are relatively small, and these windows are sliding windows. Staff felt that these windows are generally not appropriate. However, because of their size and location, facing the side yard, they appear to be acceptable in this case. All the windows will be white in color. Staff is proposing that the color should be more of an earth tone to match the trim and the seal, so that it does not stand out too starkly against the darker trim. The garage door will be sliding metal door painted white also, and staff is suggesting that the garage door also need to be more of a muted color against the stucco color. There are a number of design details that was reviewed, and staff is suggesting that some changes be made. For example, the small side-facing gable on the south elevation. I just point out to you. This is the south elevation, and then referring to this small gable here over the window. That should be redesigned or removed, as it is unnecessary architecturally, because it's simply a flat wall. So the way it's proposed right now is just a break in the roof line.
Once again, I'm sorry. What is staff proposing?
We are proposing that this small gable be removed or redesigned, because this is simply a flat wall, and this detail is just a break in the roof line.
I see. And is that occurring where the kitchen is? Is that the kitchen window?
Yes, this is right here.
And the idea is to remove the gable?
Yes.
Because there's not popping out or
yes,
anything?
It doesn't make any sense architecturally, and this doesn't really serve a purpose. And also, with staff is suggesting that the side door on the south elevation should be widened at the same depth as the proposed side door, so that the gable will end at a natural break. And that comment is in reference to this features here. Again, this gable ends at a flat wall. There's no break here. There's no modulation in the wall. So staff is suggesting that this entire area be pushed back at the same depth as this wall, as this side wall, therefore requiring some modification to the bathroom to create a natural break where the gable ends. And the last comment staff had is concerning the front-facing 2 windows along the side of the garage. This elevation here is the garage elevation fronting the street. The arrangement of the 2 windows is more is reflective of a side elevation in staff opinion. So typically, for a prominent front street-facing elevation, it should be a single, more prominent window facing the street. So those are staff comments, but otherwise, staff supports this project with some conditions, and if you like, I can go over the conditions.
I have a question before the conditions.
Okay.
So there is an existing garage at the rear, and is the existing garage to remain?
Yes. Originally, the applicant wanted to modify the garage and enlarge it, but because of zoning code issues pertaining to the legal nonconformity, the garage could not be modified. So it must either be demolished or be retained the way it currently exists.
And or get a variance of some sort
Or get a variance, yes.
for it to work. And
But again, that existing garage is not really necessary, because the project is proposing 2 new garages that meets code, and only 2 garage spaces are needed based on the size of the house.
yes, and it just the orientation was a little odd, and that's what I was asking, because the garage was in the front, trying to look like a residential home by the windows. At the same time, there's a garage at the rear.
Correct.
Which should be used as a garage. So now you have 3 car garages, and I was just wondering what the thought process was.
I mean, ideally, what in staff opinion is to provide a new 2-car garage at the back, but I believe the project will run into a turning radius problem for the garage, if that is to be enlarged.
Yes, because of the existing living space is too close to it.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. And we could ask more questions to the architect.
Any other questions? Ms. You want to go through the conditions for us?
So we're proposing 7 conditions. Condition number 1 is that the proposed vinyl hung window should not be white. Consider an earth tone color to match the sill and trim. Condition number 2, the color of the garage door should be earth tone but not white as proposed for the same reason. Number 3, foam molding should not be used for the arched openings of the covered entry and garage. Similarly, foam molding should not be used in lieu of the proposed wood sill and trim for all windows. 4, the small gable on the south elevation should be removed or redesigned. 5, the recessed opening along the south elevation should be widened at the same depth as proposed for the side door to create a natural break at the end of the gable. 6, the arch living room window should not have the horizontal mullion design. And number 7, the proposed windows on the garage west elevation should be changed to a single, more prominent window that is centered under the gable.
We don't have a windows section.
Sorry, I thought there was one. Well, we could condition that there'll be recess. Yeah.
Just wondered if we had one.
No, we.
Arch living room window should not have. All right. We have some cards on the project. Yeah, any other questions for staff? For you? Okay. Sam Young, please state your name for the record.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm the designer for the 526 Visa House. I'm right here for any questions.
Okay.
Where would the water heater and the AC units be located?
And the back. And the back.
In the back.
Yeah. Because it's an existing area.
So the back of the house, not the sides.
No. The back of the house.
Okay.
Usually, a lot of the city don't allow the AC unit on the side yard.
Just asking.
Okay.
Yes, have you considered looking at a scheme where the new garage is located in the rear at the same location of the existing garage, more or less, and the house is moved farther up? Have you considered that option?
Yes, I have already talked with Mr. Drum or the city architect, but it's very tough for I take this design. It may be I have to demolish almost over 50% of the existing house or something like that. It's very tough for the owner.
Because on a renovation like this, there's not going to be anything left of that existing house anyways. I mean, you're going to do such a massive renovation to this. I would venture to guess that not much of the existing home will remain after you're done with these old homes. Going through renovations of this kind and seeing renovation of this kind as an architect, the 2x4s in the walls are so brittle. I mean, when you even go to put a nail gun to it, they crack. So you're going to end up redoing everything, footings and everything, regardless. But I was wondering if you had looked into that option.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Actually, this house has already got approved by the planning and go to the building bench 3 years ago.
Come again, I'm
Suppose
sorry?
a two-house design, but unfortunately, the owner cannot afford it because of the finance. So the owner want to get a room to help him to use it, but he hasn't got enough of money. So he keep this style to add addition only.
I didn't quite understand what you were saying. Could you repeat what you were saying? I'm sorry.
Yeah, because of the financial, the owner cannot make like a nail or cut down anything for a good design for the existing house. We model it on. So the owner still need to keep the existing house to help to make a larger home to help them to living right there.
I don't have any more questions for that.
The conditions that staff has proposed, or do you have any problems or issues with any of those?
No, this is a good advice. I like this.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
There anybody else who'd like to speak on this project? If not, close the public hearing.
I have a question for staff.
Yes, sir.
So, in this scenario, more than 50% of the house and more than 50% of the roof is being renovated.
No, staff asked for a calculation, and that's not the case. It's under 50%, the way
On
it's
the
proposed.
roof and the
Yes,
skin. So it's considered a remodel?
It's
and
an
not
addition, a
new-
remodel, yes.
And therefore, the existing garage will suffice?
No,
But they need to upgrade to a new garage?
yeah, anytime there's an addition, the zoning code kicks in current requirement for garages. In this case, the one-car garage would not be meeting code. So in any regards, a new two-car garage would be necessary. Or enlarge the existing garage. However, because of the location of the existing garage, being that it's at the setback, current zoning code for multifamily zone requires a 5-foot setback for detached garages. So essentially, the existing garage would have to probably be demolished and a new garage be built, if not retained the way it exists now.
Okay. And just so I understand correctly, the analysis was performed on the 50% rule, and less than 50% of the roof and the skin is going to be affected with the remodel.
Correct.
Is there a certain threshold of an addition which does not trigger a new garage, or regardless?
No, any addition triggers the garage requirement,
Be
be in
standard?
conformance with today's code.
And is there any reason or thought process as to demolishing the rear garage, so then it only has one garage space and then more of a backyard? And that way, the adjacent properties will basically not have a non-conforming, 1'5" setback garage that's really never going to get used except for storage right next to them. Is there anything in the code that prevents it from being demolished?
No, there's nothing in the code that prevents that. It's up to the board to deliberate and decide whether this is the best option for the project.
Okay.
But also, there's nothing in the code that requires it to be removed and brought to code.
I have no more questions, yeah?
Would you like to start?
Sure. I'll start our first project here. It's an unusual situation when you have an existing home so far set back, and so you're trying to work out a scenario where you're adding to an existing house that's already so far set back. And at the same time, because of various reasons, some being financial, you're trying to maintain the footings and the overall rear of the house and add to the front. And by putting a garage in the front of this house, it, diagrammatically speaking, as a very conceptual layout, I would think that it would affect the fabric of the neighborhood, because it's just not one of those neighborhoods where you have a car garage in the front. Typically, these older homes have garages at the rear. And the radiuses of the rear, of course, for it to work as a garage, you'd have to modify the existing building. And so, because the garage is in the front, as we're looking at the elevation, it starts to look and give an impression of a living space, but in reality, it's a garage. And that's why staff is pointing out ways to even make it look like more of a residential, living space as opposed to a garage. And so that is something that I'm concerned with, in that the garage predominantly in the front, and at the same time it's trying to be perceived as a living space. And so that's one of the issues I had. Perhaps an option is to demolish the rear, in which case there won't be a legal non-conforming space that is 1.5 from the adjacent properties, and at the same time create a nice backyard for the house, where it could be both enjoyable for this property, and also the adjacent properties won't be as impacted as well because of this massive renovation that's occurring. It's sort of an odd scenario where we're providing a new car garage and making it look like a living space, but at the same time the old garage is still there, and so those were some thoughts I had. As far as the architectural style is concerned, it's a nondescript style. I think the exposed rafter tails are nice. The way the wood eaves are depicted are nice. However, we have these blank elevations, as staff has also pointed out, that really could use some relief and some undulation, and which could be done in some simple manner. And furthermore, just the overall placement of windows without any articulation in the facade creates more of a odd scenario, coupled with the garage and everything else. When assessing just the storage in the rear, I would think the project would probably benefit from it if this is the direction we're going to go, of conditioning the demolition of it, and really creating a backyard for the house, or having them rework the design where this becomes an actual two-car garage with the required setbacks, and some of this living space is pushed up here, but that's really up to the ownership and the designer to assess. As far as the comments about the windows, yes, they need to be looked at so they follow the form and function of the space behind it. So the living room window should be more pronounced, of a bigger view, and at the same time the bedroom windows and the bathroom windows should be sized accordingly. I don't have an issue with the vinyl windows. I think in that neighborhood, especially with some of the multifamily in the area, vinyl is fine. The earth-toned color would probably help. The wood trim is a nice touch that is being introduced into the project. So we could talk about those finer details. However, as a site planning, I think the project could have benefited with more of an initial thought process as to the placement of the garage. But I'd love to hear what the rest of the group has to say.
Ms. Palmer?
I agree with most of staff's comments. I think that eyebrow on the south elevation should be eliminated, and that this whole area here seems to be not working well, and it's a whole flat surface with just a little 3.5-foot inset. I think there needs to be an inset like there is on the north side to get some more undulation and eliminate that eyebrow. I think the vinyl windows are okay if you use another color, because the drawing and the colors do not depict, when you have the vinyl, it's going to have a very light, almost white, and then a surround. So we're going to have this brown and white with all these windows, and I think that could be an issue. We have several drawings, and one of them has the arch around the entrance is painted white, and I think that's this one here.
This one?
And I think that could be something to look at. I agree that the garage door needs to be a changed color. I think it's a fairly simple design. The other questions I had were the vinyl windows. You submitted, is that a door design over there?
Yes.
Okay, so that's, eliminates that question. The only other comment I'd have is on the landscape plan, we've got quite a few plant materials that aren't within the drought tolerant range, so some of these should be changed. They have trees in the front, all on the left side, or 2 on the left side. You might be able to eliminate one of those. And just revise that landscape plan to fit within the drought tolerant plantings. My comments for now.
All right, thank you. I, too, can support staff's conditions. I understand where you're going with this. I mean, if you look at it on a clean slate, you would do that. And the fact that the applicant is not in that position, I'm a little hesitant about conditioning taking out the garage, but I know exactly where you say that's the logical way to lay this out. As I've been in the past, I'm not supportive of vinyl windows, especially if they're going to be putting wood around them. Thank you for pointing that out. I didn't pick up on that, because I was going to ask the question, are they doing brown vinyl windows? But they're white, right? So I would suggest either a fiberglass or wood or something that can be painted. So other than that,
I think the windows could be a real issue when we have these two-tone colors. And so many windows.
with the white vinyl, with the window, and then a dark
Because the
trim.
vinyl's going to be thick, and then they got a little, and that's why I asked how far they're recessed. We don't know that, but even then, it...
And the applicant might not have an issue with darker windows.
Pardon me?
And the applicant might not even have an issue with the darker windows.
I think they should be something other than the vinyl, just because there's so many of them.
Oh, in other words, the material.
Correct. Whereas if they had a fiberglass or... But we wouldn't be having a two-tone effect, which doesn't show on there.
It doesn't show in this.
No.
They
It would
have
start to look like this,
Yeah, right.
and I think that's a problem.
And the vinyl windows, they come in 7 or 8 colors, but the shape is the shape. It is what it is.
It might look funny to have I don't know if they dark brown, do they? They become a beige?
They do.
white?
They do. They have about 7 or 8 colors.
But it's going to be a two-tone effect, that's where. If there's one window here and one there, I don't think it's an issue, but
So the issue is more of the color of the window plus the window trim around it, of it being too much of
we have a lot of
contrast.
windows on each elevation.
Could go the route of darker mocha color windows with, similar wood trim colored.
Yeah, they did spec it as white.
Yeah. In which case, then, if the board thinks vinyl. But again, my issues with it are, because I just thumbed through the entire neighborhood. I mean, there's just no garages in the front. And, yeah, and I think it's very, it's at the point where we're going to have an odd placement of a garage that's set in. So as you're driving, down the street, you're going to see this garage, you're going to see the garage back there. And so that window issue isn't the biggest one for me. That just, as far
It's hard
as,
to see the garage in the back.
Yeah, because the street's
sort of
lower than the lot to start with. You're already a couple of feet lower.
And there's a lot of different houses on the street. I mean, I see where you're coming from, but that's not we wish it would have been otherwise, but...
you have the ability to fix it. But let's just see where we go with some sort of support, see what comes out of it.
The conditions that staff, you're
I think
supportive,
they're
you're
all-
okay with other...
Overall, yeah, the
overall,
conditions,
You have a bigger issue, really.
yeah, I think, it's,
Chairs on the ship.
I don't think I could support the project the way it is. There are certainly ways to minimize the effects of the garage. I've seen projects where, in these scenarios, they have more of a high-band louver window out here, where it becomes more apparent that it's more of a, garage as opposed to a living space like this. that was typically a way they handled it in the 40s, where they were trying to put it in the front.
So it's just a light source, it's not really a window, you're saying it's like
Something like that, yeah. Because it's a garage at the end of the day. You're not trying to get light to read or...
Right. The light is...
Yeah. So, and there could be opportunities on the other side for windows if they're trying to get light in there. But the idea is to treat this neighborhood just as much attention as others.
Sure.
And the overall context, there needs to be some, in my opinion, there needs to be some overarching reasons why it's been designed that way. And so that was my issue.
Other than cost.
Other than, yeah, because that was...
The cost is not a hardship.
I mean, it's a whole new house, basically.
It could, like I said, I could support it with, I think, demolition of the rear, where we're getting rid of a non-conforming item, because it's non-conforming and it was fine the way it is, but now we're doing such a massive renovation to this thing, where it really is based on new codes, new everything, and then we're keeping this non-conforming aspect in the back, where it doesn't need it. It needs a garage, and it's got a garage in the front, and we could make the garage look like a garage, so we're not, creating the Knott's Berry Farm effect, and at the same time providing backyard for the home and relief for the surrounding neighbors. So that's kind of my approach on it, but there could be a split decision on this, and we move on to the next one.
Just to make sure you have all the information you need, and I have a lot of code experts here. I'm not the code expert. But if it were a new house, then more of the existing house may need to be demolished than just the portion to get the turning radius. The existing setback on, I'm not quite sure which direction it is. I think it's on the south side, if north is up on the site plan. That's currently at 3.5 feet.
That's out there.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
outside.
On the south side, that's 3.5 feet. That would have to be moved to 6 feet. There's a turning radius issue. If the garage were in the back, the garage would need to be moved away from the property line. Likely, the entire existing house would need to go away, and the whole project would be reconsidered from there. So just wanted to let you know the
But
code
I pointed that out.
impact.
I said, it's the only way it's going to work with this addition is keeping the garage in the front and demolishing it in the back. And unless the other scenario, like you're pointing out, is some massive surgery to that existing house.
Yeah, I mean, that may have to go away entirely, yeah.
And I don't think I'm suggesting that, or this board's suggesting that at this point. But I understand your take on it, and that's what would have to happen if we wanted to move the garage in the rear.
Right.
Yeah.
You guys want to entertain a motion?
Well, I think we had some additional conditions. Rather probably caught more of them than I did.
Well, the board generally agree with staff's comment in terms of condition. However, there was a comment about the landscape. Some of the plant selection are not drought tolerant, and that should be changed. And also, there are 3 trees in the front.
I just think the landscape could be redesigned to maybe help that garage rather than just stick some shrubs and a couple trees on the left side. So to consider the garage in the landscaping, as well as change some of the plant material to comply with the requirements.
Okay, and also to remove 1 or 2 trees from the front yard, because it's...
Well, I just say revise the landscape
Okay,
to
all right,
to work.
okay.
But on the other conditions you have with it, I would say remove that gable no matter what, on the, if you guys agree with that.
I
Not an
no-
either or.
Yeah, no, I think all of these are,
Yeah, in fact, the gable could move over if this part of the facade is is actually moved in to create this relief, then it would be almost a nice place to move the gable over and then rework this roof somehow. But
I think they need a
Yeah.
recess there, because you're going to be looking down, that's where you, when you drive by, you're looking down that elevation. I think it needs a larger recess.
so we could let, again, that be worked out, so between the applicant and staff. But yeah, overall, I think the condition works.
Staff also heard about the window material, whether vinyl versus fiberglass would be more appropriate, and also the color.
Yeah, I won't support it with vinyl.
No,
So I would say something other than vinyl.
I think it would be a Band-Aid to put vinyl and then put a trim
Trim
around
piece
and
around.
have two different colors. I would,
So no vinyl windows.
Would aluminum be okay?
I don't have a problem.
just something they could paint and
Well,
work.
aluminum they couldn't paint, but they could have
get
a
it
lot.
anodized.
You could get
Dark, you know,
it dark, different colors that it comes
And
in.
it wouldn't be a wide,
No, it would be thinner, much thinner.
so we're saying no vinyl.
No vinyl. But you would be open to either fiberglass or aluminum.
Yes.
Or wood.
Or wood.
And
The paint colors complement the trim and the window to be similar as opposed to white and,
okay, so they could be similar, but they could also be, they don't have to be the same color. They could be two different complementary colors.
say, within a tone or two.
Right, but white windows are not
Correct.
allowed here. Got it.
With this particular scheme, I mean, I would think white could work if you weren't putting the dark trim around them. You know, I think, isn't that what, I mean, I have an issue with vinyl, but just
Just
in this, the
just
color.
the color.
Yeah.
Contrast, the white and the brown is just too much.
Okay, and there was some discussion of a recess. Are we requiring a recess, or nail-in windows with the trim around them are okay?
Depends on the type of window. I don't know how much the recess is proposed, it's not listed here.
Because if it's a nail-in window, then you would have the 7/8 inch depth of the stucco and then the trim around it, so that would give you, an inch and a
The question
half.
is whether we want to go with block frame and recess it a
That,
bit.
right, if you're requiring a block frame, we wouldn't necessarily recommend it on a house like this, but that's up to you.
I think, based on the quality of drawings that I'm seeing and the budget that I'm hearing, probably the nail-on is going to be
As
more
long
of
as
the
there's some recess.
economical approach. Plus, the waterproofing, of course, becomes a little easier to handle. So I would, sounds like we're talking about a non-vinyl window where the color of the window and the surrounding trim to be fairly close, if not close or
The worst scenario.
okay, yeah, close or complementary, which I know is a little deceiving. So it's either close or
Trouble with English.
it is. One could say blue and yellow are complementary, right? Okay. Are there other
And then
conditions?
that's all I heard, Ms. Wright.
Yeah, there was one that I heard from Board Member Palmer, but I didn't quite catch. The first thing that you mentioned about an inset shouldn't be 1 foot at the north side,
No, what I said was, along that south side,
okay?
it could be an inset similar to what's on the north side. They have like a 12-foot wide inset,
Oh, I see.
3.5-foot notch,
Oh, I see. So it should,
as an example.
you were talking about the width of that inset rather than the depth.
Correct.
Okay, and I
To
think,
break up the facade.
I think we have a condition that speaks to that as well, so I'm going to just then read back the conditions that we just went over, and rather could read any changes to the conditions in the staff report. So revise the landscape plan to fit within drought-tolerant landscape requirements. Landscape design should be revised to enhance the house and garage. Windows shall be fiberglass, aluminum, or wood. Color of window and trim should be close in hue and complementary.
There you go.
That-
She got them both in. I like
Ask her first.
Well, I could take a stab at making a proposal here.
Okay.
And we'll see if, what we need to do after that. I move to approve the project with those conditions. However, I'd like to add a condition where the non-conforming garage and storage at the rear is demolished and replaced with appropriate landscaping.
I could go with that. I'll second that.
Would you like to see the landscaping details for that area?
I think staff can work that back.
Okay, so there was a motion by Mr. Simonian to approve the project with the recommended conditions, including staff conditions, and also to demolish, with the condition to demolish the existing storage and the one-car garage, and replace that area with with appropriate landscaping. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Oh, Ms. Palmer, second, okay. So this will be roll call?
You know what, one second. My only one comment will be, what about the driveway section down in there? So I mean, you include that in that? If you're going to take out the garage, you really got to do something with the driveway along the
That's a great question.
house there, you know?
Per the zoning code, if the driveway does not lead to a garage, it must be removed and landscaped.
I think it would enhance the whole house. The house would look more uniform with the rest of the neighborhood, and they would gain a lot more usable space.
In fact, they could, if they could switch this to a sliding door, they would be able to access that whole area.
They have a patio area?
Yeah, if they even put a wood gate here, they could use all this as side area. Makes sense, so that's a good point.
I mean, I don't know what to consider for that.
So then I would modify the condition to include that the existing garage driveway be removed as well.
The unusable portion of the driveway.
Yes, the unusable portions of the driveway, existing driveway.
And that's a good point. And on that note, if they want to work with staff of integrating some sort of a slider in the living area to use it as exterior space, I don't think it's going to alter the elevation all that much.
No, not at all.
That would not be a
It
problem.
would enhance it
Yeah.
for opportunity.
Okay, so there was a motion by Mr. Simonian and a second by Ms. Palmer. This will be roll call. Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Simonian?
Yes.
Chairperson Ellis?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0 to approve the project with conditions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Removing that garage.
All right. Next up, it'll be 900 West Glen Oaks. Mr. Collin, would you like to walk us through that one?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
Thanks.
members of the board. The proposed project's located at 900 West Glen Oaks Boulevard. It's our first time submittal for final review. The project site consists of 3 separate lots totaling 15,660 square feet and 159 feet of frontage along Glen Oaks Boulevard and approximately 100 feet along Highland Avenue. Subject property is a relatively flat site. The applicant's proposing to construct a 1-story commercial retail building that's approximately 9,000 square feet. There'll be 25 subterranean parking spaces and 13 on-grade parking spaces. The parking spaces will be located at the rear of the property, will be accessed off of the alley. In addition to the commercial building, the applicant has also submitted a application for a sign program, which consists of 12 wall signs, 6 facing Glen Oaks Boulevard, 6 facing the alley or parking spaces at the rear. There are 2 address signs facing Glen Oaks and Highland Avenue, and 2 projecting signs. For the zoning ordinance, sign programs are required for sites where new multi-tenant buildings are. Subject site is located in the West Glen Oaks Boulevard neighborhood, This neighborhood is comprised of commercial, multifamily residential uses along Glen Oaks Boulevard, extending from Pacific Avenue westerly to the city boundary. As it relates to signs, signs can be fabricated from a variety of materials, but reflective or bright colors should be avoided. Typefaces should be chosen for their simplicity, clarity, and architectural appropriateness. Signs programs should coordinate with the building architecture, including the use of internally consistent materials, colors, and textures, while not competing with other signs or creating visual clutter. The proposed building is oriented toward the street. The retail uses are accessed from the front of the building. An on-grade parking lot, as mentioned, will be accessed off of the alley. For the applicable guidelines, the goal is to create an active building street edge with a variety of color, textures, and variations in building plane by suggesting that buildings be close to the sidewalk. The front of the building has a 5-foot setback from the front property line with a break for passageway and at the corner. Retail spaces, as mentioned, are oriented toward Glen Oaks Boulevard, creating an active street frontage. Furthermore, the proposed design provides entries facing Glen Oaks Boulevard with large expanses of storefront windows, varied building forms, colors, and textures. The sign program proposes wall signs that are oriented towards Glen Oaks Boulevard and the alley. The wall signs that face Glen Oaks are proposed to be placed either above or below an exterior metal beam adjacent to the respective tenant spaces. The wall signs at the rear will be placed at the wall or on the wall at the rear of the tenant spaces. The building identification or building address sign is proposed toward the corner of the building at the intersection of Glen Oaks and Highland Avenue. In addition, there are 2 projecting signs proposed along Highland Avenue and adjacent to the alley to direct customers to the parking spaces at the rear of the building and the subterranean parking garage. Signs should enhance the architectural character of the building, be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, including residential neighborhoods. All signs appear well-designed and properly placed. The sign program appropriately delineates locations of signs which will avoid visual clutter and complement the contemporary style of the building. The signs appear located well on the building and site walls. However, additional information must be provided to determine location and placement of signs. The Planning Department believes that the proposed commercial development will result in a well-designed shopping center, meeting the intent of the guidelines, and will be harmonious with the neighborhood's character, subject to modifications. The Planning Department is recommending that the project be approved, subject to conditions. We have 7 conditions that are specific to the project as a whole, and 6 relating to the sign program. Would you like me to read through those?
You know what I'd like to do, actually? Why don't you read through the design ones first, and let's consider design, and then come back and look at the sign.
Okay.
Okay, so just do the design ones.
The first suggested condition is to submit lighting details for review and approval by staff prior to building plan check submittal. This includes lighting for the passageway, landscaping, and building exterior. And since the writing of this, the applicant has provided a detail sheet.
That would be it for the lighting? All right, okay.
The second is to provide landscape planters adjacent to the building facade facing Glen Oaks Boulevard and/or additional planters in the open space. Third, the planter within the open space at the front shall have canopy trees instead of the king palm trees to provide shade. Fourth, submit an updated landscaping plan with drought-tolerant palette of trees and plants. Fifth, the paving for the driveway leading to the subterranean garage and passageway shall be decorative, subject to the approval of planning staff. Sixth, the driveway leading to the subterranean garage shall be permeable. And seventh, all planters shall utilize drip irrigation in an effort to minimize water consumption. Now, just as an aside, staff has received one letter which was attached to your staff report. And in addition, staff has also been had conversations with Mr. Daniel McCauley, and they're here as well to speak on the project.
Right.
basically concludes that portion of it. When you'd like me to go through the conditions for the sign program, let me know.
Okay. Any questions for staff?
The planners that are being proposed by staff would be integrated where the storefronts are? Is that the idea?
Yes,
By pushing back the storefronts or front of them?
in front of them.
Front of them, got it. And as far as the orientation of the parking garage is concerned, with access, what departments have looked over the access to the garage and so forth?
Let the architect answer.
Okay. I don't have another question for staff at this point.
All right. All right, we'll open the public hearing. I guess I would start with the architect, Mr. Poindexter, or the applicant. You're both here. Would you like to start with the applicant? Right. You want to come on and approach us, and please state your name for the record, Mr.
Cameron.
Cameron. Gotcha. Okay.
Cameron REI from Envirotecture, 3600 Wilshire Boulevard, Suite 1402, Act 90010. First, I'd like to thank the staff and for helping us getting through this design and coming down here and presenting it to you. We have been working on this project for quite a while. This is the second time that we are coming here but we have changed the design completely from two-story to one-story. So it's a new project, but I just thought I'd mention it. The owners were here too, but they had to leave, so they aren't here to express their concern. With that said, I'm going to turn the mic to my partner, John Poindexter, and he's going to...
Thank you.
While they do that, I just want to mention that design that came before you was quite some time ago, and that was not included in your packet.
Okay. All right, please state your name for the record, sir.
Yes, thank you. My name is John Poindexter with Envirotecture. The address is 3600 Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. And I would like to echo, first thank Cameron and the applicant, and also echo his thanks to staff. Both Brad and Stephanie provided direction during the evolution of this design, and that direction was very helpful. As well as thank the commission, the board, for its consideration. We know that you volunteer your time and in the interest of the city. And second, as Cameron mentioned, I would like to reiterate that there was a previous project at this location. It was a two-story project. The board considered that back in 2009. It was stalled because of construction financing, and the project was redesigned to a one-story structure, which significantly changed the design, and this is the first time that this board has seen this new design. I'd like to note, however, that Envirotecture has duly noted all the previous comments that were made, and those comments have been incorporated as a part of this design evolution. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about our design philosophy for this project, and first talk about the architectural compatibility. I think Brad noted the basics, but in coming up with this design, we surveyed virtually all of the more recent buildings along the Glen Oaks corridor, west of Pacific, and we looked at the architectural style when they were built and some of the philosophies that were involved, and we chose this contemporary style just for its compatibility with the neighborhood. The neighborhood is a combination of post-World War II one-story structures and also a number of much more recent structures. The more recent structures are predominantly contemporary of a number of styles. Envirotecture has executed a number of contemporary styles as well as traditional styles, and we feel that this contemporary nature is appropriate for this location on the boulevard. In addition, we would like to note that the reduction in size from two stories to one stories has assisted in alleviating some of the concerns that we heard previously expressed about the two-story design. We now have a project that's much more compatible with the scale and massing of the rest of the boulevard, and we have a project which has been pulled closer to the street, which was one of the concerns that was previously expressed by staff relative to providing a very pedestrian-friendly environment along the street edge. It's in terms of massing, as Brad noted, the site is composed of 3 individual lots, and that is consistent with much of the boulevard, and for that reason, the massing of buildings on this boulevard is a lot smaller than is afforded by the 150-foot distance along Glen Oaks Boulevard. To accommodate that, what we have done with this building is we have broken the building mass into 2 individual masses, which are separated by a pedestrian passageway that separates those 2 masses. That reduces the overall scale and massing and produces massing which is much more compatible with other buildings along the boulevard. Regarding landscaping, with the reduction in project scope, we have provided opportunities for landscaping, and as Brad mentioned, there is a signage program which is intended to provide certainty in terms of the type and quality of signage that is provided at the site, and still provide some flexibility to individual tenants. This is a speculative retail building. Individual tenants have not been identified at this point. We are aware that some of them will have some of their own signage requirements, be that they might be franchises. We try to provide signage which ensure scale and location, but also provide some level of flexibility to individual tenants. I think, as Brad mentioned, the mechanical equipment is up on the roof, and it is surrounded by, it's set back from the edge of the roof, and surrounded by a screen so that there's no visibility from the street. And lastly, I would like to mention that we have reviewed the staff report. Thank Brad for his comments and recommendation. There are a number of conditions of approval that Brad mentioned that we take exception to. First, there's a condition of approval that has to do with the landscaping adjacent to the building facade along Glen Oaks. At the location that I think is that Brad suggested for that landscaping, we would like to note that, well, we object to it for 3 reasons. One, the building has been designed to provide for pedestrian access for individual tenant spaces immediately from Glen Oaks Boulevard. That means that there are a number of entrances from Glen Oaks Boulevard. Landscaping at that location would have to be subdivided, and you would end up with small individual pockets, which is a maintenance problem. And 2, the placement there would interfere with the intended pedestrian orientation. Because this is a retail project, you want the pedestrians to have immediate access to the storefront. The nature of retail is such that there's something in the window that attracts your eye. You want to come closer to read a menu or to look at the detail on some merchandise on display before you go into a shop. The placement of landscaping between the storefront and the pedestrian sidewalk would interfere with that. And third, we think that landscaping at that point would interfere with the possibility of casual outdoor dining between the building edge and the public right-of-way. Second, there is a recommended condition of approval to replace the king palms that are shown on the landscape plan with a canopy tree for the purpose of shade. We object to that also for 3 reasons. First, king palms, well, the boulevard itself is punctuated by a combination of fan palms and king palms. We selected the king palms to sort of continue the existing landscape theme in the parkway, which is on both north and south side of Glen Oaks Boulevard. Second, and we think that provides for compatibility with the existing landscaping in the parkway, which is already there. Second, because this parkway is on the north side of the building and staff's intent is to provide for shade, we think that it would be ineffective because it's on the north side of the pedestrian walkway. What you're providing shade for is the vehicle travel lanes, not necessarily the pedestrian way. And third, because this is a retail building, we are very concerned about visibility of tenant signage, and so we have to be very careful on the selection of canopy trees. Certainly we could select a canopy tree which has a transparent canopy that could still afford visibility of the signage, but that would not meet staff's staff's objective of providing for a shade canopy. And third, is a staff recommendation that the driveway into the parking garage be made of a permeable surface. We differ from that suggested condition of approval because we don't think it would be effective. The parking area and the driveway is along a narrow. Permeable surfaces are most effective when they are large areas and you can direct surface runoff from other areas of the site or from the roof onto them so that they sheet across and soak into the ground. We don't think that that would be effective here. We think that that condition would be, spending a lot of bucks to get a little bang, and we just don't think that it would be effective. And lastly, there was a condition of approval relative to the signs. I know that you wanted to take up the signs later.
Mention it now while you're here.
Okay, well, there was a recommended condition of approval that the dimension, to restrict both the location by providing dimensions to the locations of the signs, as well as restricting both fonts and colors of the sign. As I mentioned, this is a speculative retail project, and we think that providing that rigidity will work against the flexibility that we know our retail tenants are ultimately going to want. And for that reason, we would request that that condition not also be imposed. That concludes our architectural presentation. We know that the owner is here, and there are a number of things that he wants to bring up. I will note that there has been some contact with the adjacent neighbor who's made has expressed some concerns about the course of construction impacts of the site, and I'll leave that to the owner to address. And if there are any questions for either myself or Cameron relative to the design of the project, we can certainly address them. And thank you very much.
Hang on, sir.
Sure.
Yeah, I have a question. Could you clarify this material board? It states that you have travertine, and I'm looking at this. Is this just
The travertine?
Is this a sample or the color or what?
That's a photographic sample of the color. We have an actual physical sample of the color of the travertine.
But it shows green.
It doesn't render very well on the rendering.
Oh, okay, let me ask this then. What color is the building? Is it that color or is it this color?
What?
You've presented
3 different colors.
3 different colors here.
We can't have cross-communication because it's being recorded, so you got to talk into the microphone. We could call you up again, but you could give that to staff, so we'll get that, and then you guys could answer the questions through the microphone.
Okay. Which colors are you talking about again?
We have this color scheme,
There.
and we have that color scheme.
And you got this one, right?
What's the real color
Similar.
scheme?
Okay. Cameron?
Yeah.
You're talking about on the rear?
No,
What
the
about
building.
the whole building?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're all different colors. That's we kind of just wanted to
Got
figure
green
out
and
where are we
orange
going
brown,
here.
and that's
The
tan.
package that was given to us, the photocopy colors, don't match the material board colors that you've presented.
Oh,
Don't
okay.
match that.
And they don't match that.
The material board is the more accurate
Okay.
color. That's the intended color.
Those are the
So we
intended
ignore the colors.
on that.
They're pretty close.
The other one, orange. Yeah, that one's close. That one's not so far.
The green, yeah, that's a little
The perforated metal is the green color?
that is the green color.
And what material is that?
That's stucco.
Okay.
And then
The perforated metal panel on the roof does not show on this rendering.
Okay, that's why I was confused, because it said
Oh,
that.
so that's
And what
Five
material
rows.
is the canopy over the ninth? Yes,
that's just aluminum.
aluminum.
The travertine, that's this area.
oh, so that's not this color. That's the travertine.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, you can see how we're a little confused because I
Yeah,
thought
I
that
see
was
it
this color.
standing.
Yeah. Okay.
That is the travertine that's being
Yeah,
used.
that's the travertine, which is
Yeah.
that piece. Oh. Okay.
The travertine that you're, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's okay, you're on travertine, so go ahead.
Stick on travertine.
Is this the actual material, the glossy material like this, or are you going to go
It's
with more of the
intended to be a
matted
polished travertine,
contemporary
yes.
look?
Yeah, that's how it will look.
This is it.
Polished travertine.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Palmer?
What is the pink?
See what's-
Can you speak into the microphone and introduce yourself? I'm sorry.
Cameron, REI, that is the planter, for the planter boxes.
Those are walls?
Yes, the walls of the planter boxes.
CMU walls? Are those CMU block walls?
Yeah.
Colored.
Colored
Got it.
CMU.
And it's that
Oh,
hot pink is the intention.
It's not.
Wouldn't describe it as hot pink, but it is pink.
Pink, got it.
Which is a
I
standard
don't
color
know.
for
Let's
CMU.
ask
Is this, I'm sorry, I'm still confused. It's not going to be pink.
It has a red in it, but it's not
Then
pink.
what is this?
It's
What it is?
Oh,
Okay.
here, we heard him.
Okay,
I don't know if
we're
the
just going to
public
have
can
to
see it.
discuss this.
Okay, all right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to ask some holistic questions about the design in general, just so I could better understand, because I've been just writing down what all your material symbols stand for, because I know you're using your program, and so, just so I understand it, could we bring that actually up here? And you could bring the easel up here as well, I'm sorry.
Where we can stick it on.
And you could actually bring it, I'll help. Over here. So, and you could stay up here if you don't mind, just to answer the question. So we have the travertine in this area.
Right.
Then we have stucco and stucco as well, but are different colors.
Right.
And then we have some sort of an aluminum finish for these areas.
Yeah.
And the way the elevation is depicted is there's different color aluminum. Is that the case, or is it all the natural?
all natural.
All natural aluminum. And then you are proposing some sliding doors in these areas. And is the idea to create some sort of outdoor seating in this area?
Yes.
And where is the property line on the site plan?
It's 5 feet away from the storefront, right there.
This is the property line?
That's the property
The solid line?
Yeah.
And is that some sort of a block wall that's going to create basically the barrier? Is that the idea, or what is going to be along that?
Just going to be level with the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So there's no
barrier.
No wall whatsoever. Okay, so
However, I would point out that that's the location that staff was recommending additional landscape planters. Yes.
okay, so I understand, because you only have 5 feet to play with and work with and design around.
Right.
So, and do you foresee these being used as some sort of an outdoor seating in this area?
Absolutely.
Have you considered creating that outdoor seating by moving back your space a bit, or do you want to, how have you addressed that?
We would lose square footage if we pull it back, so that was the intention, to maximize our square footage to meet our parking requirement and
And-
still have some.
And you're not sure what your tenant's going to be?
That's right.
Okay, I understand. And as the perforated metal that's shown, which is this,
Above here, which we wanted.
Yes. That is set back from the roof.
that's over here.
Correct.
And from the sidewalk, we're not, we're not
Obviously,
seeing.
very far away.
Across the street from my...
And all your HVAC equipment is in this area?
Correct.
And as far as your parking is concerned, you're accessing it off of the driveway?
Right.
And have you discussed it with Department of Transportation?
Yes,
And-
we did.
Yes.
Tom has seen it and has approved it.
And insofar as servicing is these spaces, services, deliveries, and so forth, where do you see that happening?
From the alley side, we have plenty of space and surface parking at the back, and early mornings, there's no traffic. They could use this area for.
So you could
loading.
maybe put some signage, no parking between this hour and this hour
Maybe.
for delivery, just so you're not blocking the alley.
Correct.
And you're staying off of the alley. The way you broke up the massing of the building, this is open, it's an open
Correct.
breezeway.
Right.
And you have, on the rear side, these are aluminum?
Correct.
2x6?
Right.
And then the lights that you provided, are these the lights, or are those the interior lights?
Those are the interior lights. They're there's going to be something like this.
And it glows.
Would those go here or inside the space?
No, here.
They go inside the
Different heights and
passageway.
different size to create a really playful.
And the west, so this is this elevation, right?
Mm-hmm.
This one.
against another building.
Concrete
Up against the other
blockages
building.
against an adjacent building.
You see, that's the section through the breezeway. These are the lights. There's a trellis.
So the trellis just break, okay, that's right.
Where's the trellis is here?
Right.
And in the three-dimensional, it's not depicted in the
around the corner.
three-dimensional model. Okay.
Yeah, the angle. The camera.
So that's the only light you get up through there is where that trellis.
Natural lights,
Right.
yeah, and from the back too. It would be good.
Right, but I just meant everything else is solid except for those bars.
Correct.
This is
Right.
So this is open, there's no window there? It's just a 2x6 just to allow lighting.
Right.
That's a nice relief. And are all, so you have the multi-slide and the storefront system. And are these going to be the chrome or dark colored storefront? You know, the color of this?
The color of the glass or
No,
the frame?
the frame.
It's going to be aluminum, there's aluminum.
All aluminum, natural aluminum.
All natural aluminum. Want to maintain that aluminum bands that we have and horizontality of it.
And you're showing some landscaping here.
We have some landscaping at the front of, this area.
Is there a site plan?
Out 5 feet.
Oh,
That's in the parkway.
Parkway, that's it.
And
There is a
point out that
parkway
that's,
in that area that are you gonna maintain it and bring it up to speed?
We're going to try to, but the public work dictates what we can plant in there, and the issue of the palm tree and all that, that's going to be, I mean, we're just wishful thinking that we could put palm trees in there.
Planters you have here, these are raised walls?
These are, that's 18 inches.
If you need.
Thank you. These are 18 inches high, and that's 4 feet high. That goes along here. And the one.
So that, the pink CMU, for lack of a better term, it's this area?
Correct.
I see. Are you talking about that terracotta?
Yes, that's the, yeah.
So
But
how
the-
does
But
some-
the print
I'm
came
sorry.
a little pinkish.
How does somebody get into here with a 4-foot wall that becomes a very tight...
This is an alley.
Right. But coming in here, this becomes a very tight turn with a 4-foot wall.
That's 18 inches. The other edge of it is 18 inches. That part of it is only
That's just to get an elevation
That's just to-
change?
a little. You're concerned about the visual.
Not visual, no, I just know it's going to be a difficult place. Everybody's going
A lot of fenders might get
to
digged.
have tight space and a big back turn
You
in
got
there.
a 20-feet alley here.
I've been down
at the
that
back.
alley.
Okay, and we're heading back 5 feet from the alley, so we have 25 feet actually. That's which is bigger than the average driveway.
Any other question?
The brown color, what color, this is the terracotta?
that's terracotta.
That's the travertine.
I'm sorry, the travertine. And then we have this green color and the red color, which are
Both stucco.
both stucco, and that's the green, and that's kind of a Navajo white.
Yeah.
And the Navajo is which one?
Is at the back only.
Is it this?
This guy.
So we have the
This one
Navajo is
isn't
this, and then the
an
green, that green that you have is all the green.
Right, exactly.
And then what is this? What color is this? That's the orange?
That's
That's
the
the
Poppy seed orange, kind of.
And the purpose of this was to kind of match the color of the travertine, because we're not carrying it all the way in.
And what's your surface going through the...
Here, it would be concrete, but with the glass gravel, so to just differentiate it from the sidewalk. But I'd like to maintain that whole, to make this part of the sidewalk, so it would be more inviting.
So this is stucco over here? Yes. Or this is stucco? And the travertine ends here?
Correct.
And what's is it the concrete floor?
Is that the same that goes around the perimeter?
Yes.
With the
All
5 foot?
All the 5 feet around it is going to be the same.
Because that doesn't show
material.
on here.
So we haven't called that out, but the staff has asked us, and that's what we...
And this is multi-slide as well?
Right. So once they're open, these two spaces would be kind of outdoor, indoor space.
I mean, if it's a
Restaurant
it almost
use.
connect them. In that sense, outdoor seating-wise.
Right.
Was there enough, have you considered opening up this area as well with trellises? Or there was no need because of the service was right here?
That's both. That's why they need more weather protection, and
I have no more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, we have some other cards, and then we'll come back and talk signs, I think.
And I think, the owner?
Yeah, that's who I was going to just go to next to. Mr. Manukian?
Thank you very much. My name is Sam Madukian. I apologize. We have a civil service hearing that I've stopped, so everybody's waiting over there for this. I apologize for going back and forth. First of all, I want to, I'm one of the managing partners, and I wanted to thank you guys for your time. I want to thank the Pelencano Homeowners Association. They've been, and all the neighborhood. We've met with them and tried to get feedback from them, so I appreciate their patience. As far as the colors, I'll be very honest with you. That is not what I started out with. You can, combination of what staff came back with, and by the time we reached this point, I threw my hands up in the air. So I'll leave that up to you guys. And
What colors did you want?
it wasn't pink, and but you know what? I'll leave that. That's your area of expertise, and my architect. You guys work it out. The point of this property, we've been working long time to get where we are today. As I said, I appreciate the feedback we got from the neighborhood, from the homeowners association, and some of the changes and some of the ability to open up the interior for outdoor seating was an option we wanted to leave on the table, as we are currently speaking with a couple of high-profile tenants that they wanted that option to be able to have that. So that was some of the changes that we had requested. Basically, I appreciate your time, and if there's any questions that I can help answer, as long as it's not about color. I appreciate your time.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Please.
It would be, I think, very desirable to, let's say, get a restaurant use in that space. In which case, do you think it would be a good idea to provide outdoor seating in that area?
Well, we've gone down that path with there's one of the tenants we've talked to is a restaurant use, and if we can get their commitment to the space, what we would do is come back and ask for a possibility of opening it up. But these are all. There's nothing we're going to do without your guidance and direction. And
You don't have any hard commitments at this point?
No, we are currently also talking with a couple other tenants that are totally different uses. So to open that up at this stage, and I don't, if I had to put a certain percentage chance of having a restaurant there, I would say maybe at this most percent, it would probably be 20% chance we would have a restaurant there. And that's why but I agree with you. I mean, that would be an ideal situation. If we had a commitment, we would definitely go forward without hesitation and do an outdoor seating. So
If you could move that storefront system
Absolutely.
back, have outdoor seating, which would be much more conducive to the tenant, and at the same time, it would be leasable space as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. No other questions? Thank you very much. I'm going to go back to the
All
civil
right,
service.
thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next I have Patrick Masihi, please.
Members of the DRB Commission, my name is Patrick Massey. I am the former president of the Plank States Homeowners Association. I am not 100% for this project. I'm actually 110% for this project. Sam Manukian not only has met us on one occasion, he's actually met us on two occasions. When the two-story project was at hand, he actually reached out to us, the Plank States Homeowners Association, and he met with me. He also met with the current president, Joylene Taylor, and board, and explained the one-story project. He's absolutely right. The colors have changed since we've seen this particular rendering. What we saw was a little bit different than what we have here, but the structure itself is the same. The stucco and all the materials that you see, we were explained how the material would work into this. One thing I want to say is that this particular design works from a marketing standpoint for retailers. It allows ample light to come into that retail space where even the clients would be happy to actually step in and spend their money. The project itself, I think, has a lot of advantages. We were told about the palm trees, the king palms, and I have to agree, they actually are compatible with the current Glen Oaks landscaping. If you look at Glen Oaks in our neighborhood, all we have are the king palms on the sides. Now, in the median area, that's a different story, but I think that's the reason why the architect has chosen those particular types of palms. Overall, we were also told that this project is going to have over 10 video cameras for security purposes, which we wanted in the neighborhood for security and safety at night. Sam Manukian has assured us that all around this particular building there's going to be security cameras. We also asked the architects and Sam Manukian directly the work hours for this project, and he has assured us that he's going to comply with the City of Glendale's work hours for any kind of project. He's never violated that. So I'm very happy to say that those are the reasons why we actually accepted this project, because we asked all the tough questions, and they were nice enough to answer it one by one. So I'm very happy that this particular architecture team and also Sam Manukian have assured us that they're only going to work during the permitted work hours that the City of Glendale already has. So we're excited about the one-story addition. We're excited that one day, hopefully within the next 18 months, we can take our families and actually enjoy this property instead of taking our money to other cities like Burbank and Pasadena and spending it. We're hoping that we can basically spend our money here in Glendale, and we're happy that after many years of seeing nothing but just barren land in this corner here, hopefully we're now getting closer of getting something that the neighborhood can really enjoy. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just a point of clarification. The project is designed as a retail center. So to put a restaurant in, if it's a fast food restaurant or potentially a full-service restaurant, parking is going to be a challenge. They won't be able to meet the parking requirements. I mean, staff hasn't done an analysis of that, but the way it's parked right now, it's parked for retail.
And a restaurant would require more parking.
Correct.
And also, we have an code interpretation that I would have to reread it, but my understanding is that the outdoor dining in this configuration at the front of the building would not actually increase the parking requirement. If there are not substantial changes to the design, we would not anticipate it coming back to you for a restaurant use. We're hoping that we can take care of that on a staff level, because that's part of the point of a kind of retail center, is that its design is flexible enough to allow for any number of uses.
All right, thank you. Next, I have Kelly Bullerson. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Kelly Boulderson. This is my fiance, Dan McCauley. We live at 929 Highland Avenue. There's been a lot of talk about the alley. By the way, thanks for letting us speak. That alley, I find it hard to believe that's 20 feet from my house.
You're the house right at the corner.
We
right
are the
behind it?
house right on the corner. We have a brand new baby. We have a 4-year-old little girl, and we have a 10-year-old little boy who has extreme asthma. Last week, they tore up the foundation. It was, I'm not exaggerating, unbearable. It was like an earthquake was going on for 8 hours a day. Our entire house was shaking. My baby was screaming the whole day. My entire backyard is covered in dust. My dog was barking. There was taco trucks pulling into the alleyway. Like, this alleyway is, so close to the backyard. This project is going to be, a year, 18 months? That we're going to live in essentially a construction zone. Like, we looked up the hours, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. This can go on all day. I'm a writer for television. I write from my home. I do a lot of freelance work. Like, I have no idea even what to say at this point. We're so disappointed. Like, we knew that it would turn into something. We had been kind of led to believe by the landlord that this would be a gas station at some point. We chose this house not necessarily because we loved it or the location, but the kids' school, Mark Keppel, turned into an art magnet school, and in order to get our children in, you have to live within half a mile, and it was the only house that could fit our family and was in this half-a-mile range at that point that was in our price range. We're a little concerned about what chemicals are going to go on, the amount of dust and debris. Like I said, our entire yard, our grill, where our kids play is just covered, in a layer of dust and dirt. My son had to use his inhaler 3 times during the foundation breakup, which is not generally, normal. The fence that's there is pretty short, that's protecting the construction from our home, and the noise level is it's unbearable. I mean, our whole house was vibrating, and our bedroom, sadly, is facing the construction zone where our brand-new infant sleeps. Obviously, we're all for commerce, and we'd love to see some nice buildings go in. I'm not against that, but there's got to be some happy medium where we're not. We can't move, essentially. We do not have the resources right now to move, and we just got a nursery set up and our master bedroom put together, and it's just very, very disappointing. The alleyway is just, was bad enough having people
speeding through it already.
People speeding through it already. Now we're talking about an underground garage is going to be built. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the alleyway is essentially the driveway to this thing. I mean, it's all very, very overwhelming for us. Anyway, we just wanted to express our concerns. I don't know if there's anything that we can do. We are concerned about the chemicals and, that are used in building. I mean, that's just a fact of it. And the amount of dust and debris and the general noise all day long when I'm trying to work and my baby's trying to nap. And essentially, this project will rob our children of being able to play outside for the next however long it takes, So we're a bit disappointed. But thank you for hearing our concerns. We appreciate it.
When did you move in?
We moved in January of 11. Is that right?
Last year, about a year ago.
About a year and a half ago. We moved in right before the school changed to a magnet school. I don't know if you're aware of that. But it's really hard to get your kids in that school, and the better chances are if you have 2 of them,
Right.
and if you're in that 5.
Right. Okay.
So anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
coming
much
down.
for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Jolene Taylor.
Good evening. My name is Jolene Taylor, and I'm the president of the Palanconia Estates Homeowners Association. We'd like to thank the applicant and the architectural team for recognizing that this project is in close proximity to residents, and lowering it from two-story, as was previously presented, to one-story does help. It will allow neighbors to hopefully maintain some privacy. I do recognize the racing in the alley, and that is one concern that I would like to address to the city. It's not a design feature, but perhaps speed bumps to calm the traffic speeding in the alley. But we do appreciate also the adequate parking will be provided so that visitors will not be parking in the neighborhood. And as such, our association is in support of this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no other cards. If anybody else who is in the audience would like to make a comment. If not, do we want to let's do the sign now, or do you guys want to discuss the project before we even talk about signs? Seeing that, and then we would let the applicant to come back and talk about signs would be the kind of looking.
If you'd like to talk about the project design now and then signs, that might be an easier way to talk about it. As Brad mentioned, the applicant does get a little rebuttal time, just as a matter of course.
Right. That's okay. All right. So let's stick with the project. Let's give the applicant a chance to come back up before we discuss it. If you'd like to rebuttal at all, the applicants, do you guys have anything you'd like to? Yeah, we'll come back and deal with signs in a minute, but if anything in here, okay. All right, then you're okay? All right. I'm going to close the hearing and discuss the architecture. That work? And it's your turn, I think.
No, I'll start.
Yeah. Oh,
I started
I'm
last
sorry.
time.
I thought she started last.
Third time.
I thought you did. You started with that house, didn't you?
Getting old.
I'm off the hook.
Years ago. You're off the hook. With only two of you, it's
hard to say, right?
I think it's a nicely designed building. I'm still have no idea about the colors. I mean, I would like to see at least when it's done with staff, a correct color palette. I mean, a correct drawing of the color. One of staff's comments was about the planting against the building, and I have to agree with the architects on that. There's too many openings. You'd be piecemealed, so I don't think that's going to work. The planting in the front, and just for clarification, there are no king palms on that street. They're queen palms. The king palms would not last. They would be beaten with the wind and burn. My question to staff is the city trying to continue the palms on that particular side of the street? It's 99% of the Washingtonia palms. On the other side of the street, as buildings have gone up, they have put the queen palms, so I don't know if there's a trend to continue that, because Glen Oaks is primarily palms on the perimeters.
We will have to check the street tree plan for that. We were recommending, because there are a variety of street trees along the street, we were simply recommending some canopy tree. If there is outdoor dining, that would function in the high sun hours. But we can check with Public Works to see if there's a street tree plan. What Public Works will typically do is, if the DRB has a particular sense about what the tree should be in a particular location, they may take that into account if the tree is on their list of street trees and appropriate for the street. So we can work with Public Works on that.
I would recommend, if Public Works has, if they do have the queen palms, I would not like to see so many different trees create that corridor down there. So I think the queen palms would work, but if they allowed a canopy tree, I think the Palo Verde tree would be one that would complement the colors on the building, as well as being light and airy and some shade. I am concerned about those wings in the back with the planters, the 4-foot planters. I think that's going to be an issue, but you have trees on both sides in a 3-foot planter, and that's not going to work. So that planter needs to either be increased in width to accommodate a tree, or put a windmill palm, which could be accommodated in that little narrow area. I think The design's nice. I like the breakup of spaces. I think it might be a little dark in the corridor, but you have that one area. Has the trellis on it. I disagree with staff's comments about the permeable driveway. I think it could be a textured driveway, but I don't think it needs to be permeable. And I think that's my comments.
Okay.
Well, it seems as though the applicant has done a lot of homework up front, meeting with the homeowners associations, meeting with the neighborhood, and that is actually the correct way to handle this, is to meet with everybody up front, to get guidance, to get input, and through that collaboration, and of course working with staff, you end up with a project that is successful. You don't end up pleasing everybody. You can't always please everybody. There's always going to be some people that are impacted, such as the people directly next door. So that's going to happen. They have some specific concerns, and we heard them. That said, this board does not have the authority to deny a project because of the construction noise or construction nuisance. It's just not within our preview to do that. So I'm going to focus my comments, and our comments are going to be more architectural and signage comments no, not signage yet, architectural and landscaping comments to make sure that we do end up with a positive, successful project. The scale of the project and the massing of the project, the way the facade is broken up into various pieces and that breezeway works well. It is well designed. A lot of effort has gone into the design, and overall, I think it's going to be a nice catalyst for that neighborhood and that specific corner. We have some higher-end commercial farther west towards Burbank. That's within our city, by the way. It's not in Burbank. It's within the city of Glendale. But certainly, this area of Glen Oaks Boulevard is dated, and so it's, I think, going to be a nice addition. And what's successful about it is the fact that it's not just one big block. You know, there are articulation in the facade. There's this focal point of the main space that pops up. This portion is stepped back. This relief is created, and at the same time, we find out that there is also a skylight, which will get further light in here. And so what they could have done is just propose your typical rectangle, which would have been the wrong idea. And so they provided relief at the corner, they provided hierarchy in spaces, and as the leasing team begins to work with specific tenants, they're going to give themselves that much more of a better chance to be successful, because different uses will demand different type of spaces. And so whatever the use might be, they'll end up kind of finding the end of the building that are more compatible for them. And that's important as a retail architect to consider. So they've done that right. As far as the material boards are concerned, I think the colors are a bit confusing right now. But overall, the big picture is the layout, the architectural design, I think is a successful, will be a successful addition to the neighborhood. So as far as some of the conditions and comments that have been placed on it, I think while staff is working with the arborist and whatnot about the trees, we could also look to see what sort of landscaping could be incorporated into the parkway that might benefit the project, the neighborhood, and at the same time providing some of the landscaping that staff is looking for, because I think it's very important to have that. It's going to really create more of an inviting feeling for these retailers, more of a substantial kind of feel, and that's what we're trying to do, is to help this project succeed. So while staff and the architect are looking into that, you might want to consider that as well. as my colleague is focused on landscaping, which is very important, I'm going to take on a little more of a pragmatic approach as far as the design and the layout of the parking. I think it works well. We have some service parking in the rear. I would think it's a good idea to put up some signs where we have specific hours that deliveries will be made, so that alleyway is not blocked. We want to start controlling that a bit, and the architect could look into that. That corner where this is, I do agree that's an issue. So perhaps it could be brought back a bit to provide that relief, because I could just see a lot of people hitting that over the years. So, but again, that's a minor thing, but it's certainly something that I think the architect could look at. The lights that were proposed, I think, will work fine in that breezeway. I think that's a good idea. The travertine, however, that was proposed, I think, is a bit on the glossy side. It's probably something that I would not have picked for a commercial use. I think you might want to consider something that's more matte, something that's more, has a little more articulation on it, something for you to consider. Insofar as the colors, brighter colors will attract more attention, but at the same time you want to use it with good judgment. And so if these are the colors that we're being asked to, I guess, approve, because I assume this is it, because these are actual paint colors. My opinion would be that, the project could benefit with maybe having the green get a little darker, and as far as the orange is concerned, I think I'm okay with it. It's loud, but it's a subtle, it's a burned orange, which works. But again, the green could get a little darker, but at the same time with the orange, it does work. So if that's the direction that you're going, that certainly works. I think the storefront systems, it could benefit if you go with the anodized bronze color, a darker color, because if you have the brushed aluminum fins and you're using that as your signage, you might want to consider a darker storefront system where it doesn't all blend in as one. Again, it's just a consideration, because I can tell the architects put a lot of effort into this, so I don't want to nitpick that aspect of it, but just a thought. Overall, though, I think it'll be a successful addition to the neighborhood, and I do agree with the landscape comments that were made. I think that will help it and to blend in, and that's important. And maybe the parkway issue could be sorted out with some landscaping that you think could be good addition to it. And with that, let's see what the rest of the board has to
Was
say.
lighting on that?
On
Do you have lighting on the building?
Lighting, I think, was the first condition.
Yeah, but that
Submit
was
lighting
only,
details.
Submit lighting details. I got you.
I guess I wanted to, before you
I'm
start.
sorry. Yeah. Oh.
Regarding the lighting, I think there needs to be a big consideration of lighting on the back of the building in reference to the residences that it butts up to. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
And with the lighting, I mean, with this canopy here, you've got a lot of downlighting over here.
But I'm talking about the back side.
The back.
yes.
Could be a problem.
There's an overhang over the.
Would you object to downlighting in that canopy or not?
I wouldn't object to it.
Okay.
I think if
Subtle.
it's subtle, it might add some depth to it in the evenings.
Okay. All right, I'll jump in. I agree with my colleagues. On the street trees, I'm not real crazy about palms anyway, because they don't really do anything but up here. But I just realized, I go by that property twice a day, so I'm very familiar with the site. I'm really happy that Sam is working with you guys to clean it up. The city just cut down street trees that were just north of the project before you get to Alma. And those were like a ficus or something, whatever that kind of standard, always green little leaf tree is, but it's very dense and bushy with a white trunk. Ficus.
Yeah.
I noticed just within the last couple of months, they took out those trees, but it appears they put something back in. And so,
Those might be the crepe myrtles I was looking at.
you know, if whatever, there should be consistency, and I would vote for, you know, not palm trees and consistency with those other trees. Let's see, my other, the applicant's objection to the planters, I would agree with you guys. I think if they do something with that street, you know, in the park strip, it should not be a problem. The permeable one, I had a question mark on also, and I would agree with you on that. The driveway seemed like it doesn't seem to work. Let's see, street trees, we got the alley. I would like the applicant, we can't control the sound or anything, the city does that, but what I would like to ask the applicant to provide the neighbors a contact name of somebody who is responsible for the job site, so when there is an issue, they're not calling the city, and they're calling somebody with the job who would be a responsible party. I don't know if that's something we can request, but I think, we've done it on other projects, I know that's come up before, where there's a designated contact for the neighbors.
We'll double-check to see if it's appropriate to have
Okay.
that as a
I
DOB
would
condition.
encourage it to, and I would hope they would do that. We haven't talked the sign program yet, but I did want to, the applicant made some comment about the fonts and the dimensional signs. Now, we've done this before, we just did a sign on the project at Western and Glen Oaks, and they came in with fonts, and they still have, you know, it wasn't an issue with that product. So I look to you guys and say, I don't think that's going to be an issue for you. It seems like it can be worked out, but those are things we like to see, the colors and the fonts and things. And I think, other than that, I could support it. I think they've done a very nice job on the project. I would agree with you, sir, that's a little bright green. My wife would caution me to be picking colors. I'm a guy, but that's a pretty bright green. I would see it coming down a little bit. That was the one that caught my eye.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. That's just me. But
I'd also like to say I agree with Mr. Simonian on the shininess on this travertine.
I
I
would.
think that could be on the backside, if it's back there someplace, that could be reflective, being south-facing.
Right.
Could be a problem.
Right. Do we want a consideration? Or would that be a?
Well, let's see where else we end up on it. But yes, I think the project could be served better with a matte finish,
matte
more of a rugged stone.
All right.
We have some of those, and they look more
Yeti.
statuesque than
You know.
Yeah.
this with the stucco. And the
What I'm
aluminum.
afraid is this with that travertine, with these loud colors, would be reminiscent of some buildings in other parts of the world. That
I've been there too. I know what you mean.
Right. And it just seems very loud. And so, I mean, you would think you're in South America someplace, in a very vibrant part of some neighborhood. But that's not what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to get more of a substantial look.
All right. I'm going to look to staff. Ms. Wright, do we want to vote on this all as one sign and that, or can we do it as two separate pieces? Either approve the project and then go back and look at the sign, or what's your preference?
You can take two separate votes. It might be easier for staff to get the conditions right, because there may be also conditions on the sign
Okay.
program.
Conditions, just make sure
Right,
we're-
no, I just wanted to know if that works for you guys. We'll vote on this part, and then how that, okay, all right.
Easier to control.
Great. So, Brad, would you like to give us back the conditions as you know it? And this is up through number 7, not including the sign program.
Right. So is the board comfortable with the applicant's submittal for the lighting? Or do we need more information on that?
I think we saw lighting for the alleyway,
But not for the
but
back?
I think the concern was the project lighting.
I just think staff could look at that, but I think the concern is the rear portion.
All right, then we'll leave condition number 1 in.
They would come to staff and work out the lighting matter. Good
That was
idea.
the one.
But it seems like we should add to that condition, take particular care not to have too much bright light at the alley, but well lit enough for safety.
Right. I would agree to that, too.
We could have the domes and the visors over it.
Then I have that we're basically deleting staff's 2 suggested conditions, which would be number 2, and modifying number 3, which is about the trees in the right-of-way, subject to what is allowed within the right-of-way for the Public Works Department, and also including the possible plantings that are allowed in the right-of-way for the Public Works Department. Staff will look into that.
But also that plant material be consistent with what else is out there, not come in with a foreign variety.
And in essence, condition number 2 is a great idea. The idea is, can we integrate it into the parkway?
They already have planting in the park.
But it could be appropriate. I mean, the applicant could pay for it, and they could improve it to landscaping that works for them. I'm not talking about the trees, I'm just talking about whatever was going to go in these planters. Like these.
That's already shown on the plan.
Oh, I see.
In
Right,
Parkway.
so,
Between the trees.
so an alternate condition, and we agree with you, providing planters right in front of retail space, there are positive and negatives to that. So the condition could be replaced by staff and the applicant should work with Public Works to see what kind of planting is allowed and appropriate for the parkway planting. It should enhance the building, and the trees should be consistent with what's along the rest of the boulevard as much as possible. And we did have a recommendation if there was a possibility to use a Palo Verde tree. Did you want to?
If it's inconsistent, I think they have planted new crepe myrtles down the street.
Yeah.
Okay.
I looked at those.
Did you?
So that may be, that would be a deciduous shade-type tree.
Okay.
But I would consider, if that was what Public Works wanted to see, that the color of the crepe myrtle be compatible with the building, because they come in, I wouldn't want to see a pink one out there.
Okay.
Great myrtles that still allow visibility of the signs.
They're pretty thin, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's actually, I was going to comment on that.
I'm just saying if that's what Public Works allowed, they could pick a color that would complement the building. I only said the Palo Verde because it would be light and airy.
Okay.
And is there, we didn't hear anything from you in regards to the paving in the 5-foot setback or in the access way? Is the regular standard gray concrete?
It's a concrete with glass in it.
Is it glasscrete? Okay. Okay, great, thank you.
All right. I have to provide a correct color palette to staff.
Yeah, and we heard that consider the green to be a little deeper hue.
Big line building.
And if they want to change the orange, that's fine as well, but
Have a palette that works.
have a palette that works, yeah, that's consistent.
Yeah, just to be clear, staff usually shies away from making color comments. So we just want to be clear that we typically ask for a variety of materials, and since color is one of the most subjective elements of design, we typically don't comment on color. So that's why we nitpick with you guys to see what you'd like to see on color. It sounds like, from what we're hearing, you'd like to see a deeper green, you'd like consideration of bronze anodized aluminum for the storefront, but those are both considerations, is what we heard.
That's the direction we would go.
Okay.
But I also, that pink, whatever the walls are around the planters, make sure they're compatible with the terracotta that's on the other sheet and not a pink.
Yeah, it's the standard I think it's more of a salmon color CMU. It doesn't seem like it's terracotta, so...
Or salmon.
Yeah, so if you'd rather have a gray block,
The gray might work with the aluminum.
Yeah?
The gray, I mean, I would vote for the gray.
a polished CMU, a regular old standard CMU that just fades into the planting.
I guess as far as color is concerned, even as an architect, I pick a lot of colors. But usually on a building, one it's being painted, we'll put 3 or 4 choices up, literally, and stand there and look. And that's how I typically choose. So it's very difficult to do it out front, obviously. But we're in a situation where it's such a prominent corner, it's going to be a nice building, and so we're spending some time looking at it. And so if staff's uncomfortable with them bringing in a material board that's complete and all thought out, then if you want, you could bring it to us very quickly and we take a look at it in the future. Or there's not other choice. If staff is uncomfortable with it, we're going to have to do it.
Right.
So that's it.
It wouldn't have to be a whole review, right?
It wouldn't have to be in whole review. It would be something that staff could recommend as well, the best way to do it. But that's an option. But someone needs to look at it because...
I just think it'd be nice to have a whole...
Yeah, because the way these colors are with the polished travertine and some of the other materials, the design is worked out. Everything is fine with it, massing-wise, scale-wise. We just need to pay attention to the colors.
That could make or break.
That could make or break it.
And the polish on the travertine, was that a condition? Because what I wrote is, consider matte travertine or other stone rather than polished travertine?
Well, if they come back with that material board, maybe it could all be together.
Yeah, we're hoping not to... We're hoping to get enough direction that we
have to
would
come to
be
staff.
comfortable
Then in
working
that
with
case,
them.
more of a matte, more rugged, earthy-looking travertine sample, as opposed to the highly polished one, which you would see, let's say, in the interior.
Okay, the travertine is a fine material. It's a very blonde color. We'd like it to be a matte travertine. And if that's not acceptable to the owner because of maintenance reasons, travertine can tend to be a porous stone. They can come back with another stone that
Another stone
is
veneer could work with the
appropriate, but not a polished stone.
So what we're hearing is staff is all right with them coming with a complete material board.
Well, we'd like to get enough information so that we're comfortable, approving at a staff level rather than having to bring it back because, as you know, this property has been through a number of iterations.
And I think we've given staff enough direction with the greens, the anodized, the rust colors, everything blending together, the not polished. I trust you guys.
Thank you. And what we heard was that the bronze anodized for the storefront is a consideration because they may want it all to read together. Okay.
The other conditions I have is that the planter at the rear should either be wider, which may be a challenge due to the parking spaces that are back there, or that they put in a window palm. Did I understand that?
Well, I didn't mean the planter wider. The upper planter is only 3 feet wide, and the lower planter is wider. So maybe the upper one has to widen, and it gets set back more to accommodate somebody turning in. It was just too narrow to put
Okay.
Okay. And then I have a condition that signs be placed in the back to regulate delivery times.
Yes.
In addition to submitting the updated landscaping plan, and the board decided that they wanted a textured or decorative driveway going to the garage, not permeable.
It could be a stamped concrete.
it could just be lightly
Okay, well,
textured.
Right.
Be different, okay. And then we're still keeping the planters utilizing the drip irrigation.
Yes.
Those planters could also be bubblers. The drip tends a tendency to be a maintenance issue, and mow, blow, and go gets out there and doesn't tend to them, so I'd say bubblers or drip.
Okay. Do you want me to go through the conditions of the signs?
Yeah, why don't you do that right now, and then we'll come back, because let's see. I'm sorry?
Yes, and is there a sign designer in the audience? Is a signing? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, you know what, why don't you go through those, and then we'll just, I think we're all pretty much on the page now with the project, right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's do the signs. You want to give us your conditions, and then I'll open it again, and we'll
Okay, we have, the first one is the text of the sign program should be revised to more properly reflect design shown in the plan. Second, all signs should be dimensioned and located on the elevations. Third, window door signs should be minimized. And fourth, which the board had a concern as well as the applicant, was that fonts should be addressed in the sign program. Fifth, no can signs shall be allowed. Sixth, the proposed wall signs at the rear of the building shall not be illuminated, and to provide a color palette for approval by staff.
Now, part of the reason that we included these conditions, sign programs are always a little bit sticky. We don't see a lot of sign programs here because they're only required on new buildings. So what staff looks for and what the board has looked for in the past is enough definition so that there's an insurance that there's a complementary sign program with the building, and that each tenant can then come in and out, and then that would be approved at a staff level. So there's enough consistency and flexibility in it so that we won't have to come back to you. The first condition is intended to really clarify the text of the sign program, because right now the text of the sign program essentially, to my reading of it, says the sign should comply with code. It doesn't give really much, if any, restrictions at all on what signs are allowed. The renderings indicate a particular sign attitude, and so typically a sign program outlines that design of a sign attitude and will then allow the signage to be consistent with the building design and also flexible enough to be changed out. So, for example, if you don't care about the font, and it could be a serif font or a sans serif font, that's fine, that doesn't need to be conditioned. If there's a very particular type of sign that you think is appropriate, like a reverse channel letter for this particular location, that's also something we would like to know about. Something also that you may want to recognize is that because of the design of the building, the transformers are exposed and then attached onto the signage. So we thought the location of the sign should be more accurately located, whether it's on top of a metal element or in front of a metal element. Those are the kinds of things that will make it integral to the design. The front of the building, is really a very nice design. It's a very minimal storefront design. There's not a whole lot of information on the signage in the sign program. We'd like the applicant not to have to come back to you with a more defined sign program. We're not sure we're going to be able to get there in this meeting, and, it likely won't hold up construction if they have to come back to you, but we were trying to get it so that the sign program is well enough defined so that you would be comfortable approving the sign program. That's a long-winded explanation for
Of why it's
what,
here?
why there are so many conditions.
Gotcha.
I have some questions for the architect.
All right, well, let's bring it up and ask him. Okay. I'll open the hearing again. Mr. Poindexter,
Yes.
please state your name for the record.
John Poindexter from Envirotexture, 3600 Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles.
Thank you.
Maybe it might be beneficial. Do you mind coming up here?
Sure.
Gentleman, the pointer.
Because it's a very comprehensive program you have here, so I just want to make sure we're on the same page. So this type of signage where it's sitting above this aluminum panel,
Right.
as depicted in this picture here, right here,
Right.
where is that going to occur?
Okay, this is this horizontal element is a channel, a metal channel,
Okay.
that serves to break up the transom for the storefront. The intent is that a tenant would be allowed to install individual channel letters either on the front of that channel or on the top, as is shown here.
And
staff is recommending that, okay, you need to make up your mind, either on the front or the top, but at a stamped location.
And there was a section in here that was saying there were the reverse lit, reverse illuminated channel letters.
Mm-hmm.
Am I understanding that that basically will be lit from behind?
Yes.
And if we have the storefront above it and these are lit, what would happen to the space inside?
The reverse channel, the reverse lit channel letters are intended to be installed, and I guess we need to clarify that. That's intended to be installed on those signs which are mounted onto
Solid.
a stucco wall.
Got it. Okay.
So that you get the illumination on the wall and the reflection on the wall.
Mhm.
That isn't intended to occur for those signs which are mounted on a metal channel. And obviously, that needs to be clarified.
And in the rear facade, there are two sign areas that signage occurs. One is here and one is here.
Yes, and actually, if you look at the sign program, there are wall-mounted signs on this area as well, underneath the canopy, which identify individual lease spaces.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how do you want to treat this signage in the evening hours with the residential behind you?
It's intended that there would be restriction against any illumination for these signs on the rear because of the sensitivity of the adjacent residential area. So these signs would identify lease spaces, but would essentially be visible only during the day hours because they would not be illuminated signs. And that's staff's recommended condition. Staff noted that the sign program says that, but they think that it should be a specific condition so that it's not changed later. Yeah.
They would be on that horizontal piece then? They would be on that horizontal?
No, actually, they're wall-mounted underneath there.
The wall, okay.
Yeah.
Do we have a detail of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I believe.
But
There's a detail
like
here.
a detail of the signs.
Okay, no, I didn't see that in there.
Just the wall
and-
mount.
This is similar to what's happening in the front.
Right.
And what about this signage over here?
This is also similar to what is happening in the front, although it's our intent that because it faces residential, we would not intend to illuminate that sign. But it's similar to the other signs at the front, especially the channel letters, which are wall-mounted like that one.
The intention is to let the public know where the parking is.
Yeah.
And so, would it make more sense if that is moved somewhere in this area? So as you're driving from here or here and you're turning, you kind of know where to go?
Well, Actually, we have two parking signs. One is a
That's
pendant
already on
sign.
the side, so that's
already
over
on the
here. I
side,
see.
yeah. This is right here, and mounted up high.
And do we have a detail of what this looks like?
I believe there is in the sign program, yeah.
It's the one that looked like there was a detail of it flat, like
This
so.
is it, yeah.
Double-sided front parking, this is it.
Mhm.
Reverse panel mounted to a cabinet.
And that's
So
pendant.
this is looking at it really from the side here.
Right. Correct.
So there is some sort of a plate, and then the parking and the 900 are sandwiched on either
And
side.
sandwich on the other side is a double sided. Yeah.
I don't have any more questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Stephanie, if we designated a particular font or the style that they have on here, which is a variety of types, and if somebody comes in with a logo that's a particular font, that would be restricted? Applicant. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes. Typically, national logos are not restricted. More local businesses would have to then comply with the font. And typically, like the logo like Starbucks, for instance, that can sign, we wouldn't consider that a can sign. That wouldn't be allowed as part of the sign program. That's a logo sign. You could specify a certain outside diameter for something like that if you want. We try to make it so that the program is really flexible enough to take that in. The only challenge that we have had is with, local businesses that have had logos and want to use a different kind of font, then that can be a sticking point.
For instance, I like the block type on this particular building, and we have several other examples on Glen Oaks where we have buildings of this type of architecture, and the signs have been allowed to go up every which way, and I think it's really hurt the architecture. So if we specified a somewhat block style, not a specific font, but a theme.
Like a sans serif font
Yeah.
instead of a serif font, for
Give some
example.
flexibility, but maintain the integrity of the architecture. And certain sizes.
Obviously, you've heard the objection from the applicant, but that's certainly something that's within your purview.
I do have one card from Mr. Kosimim. Come on up, sir. Sure. And I noticed you noted trees on here. That was part of our earlier conversation, but please jump on in.
John Kosiemba, longtime resident, 905 Alma Street. I'm just around the corner from here. I walk my dog by this area forever. Born and raised in Pelinconi District 2, first on Cleveland, then at 1011 Glen Oaks, and now at 905 Alma. My parents bought the place in '53. For a period of time, of course, I didn't live there, but since they've passed on, I've moved back into that house. So I'm well familiar with the neighborhood. Now, they had the ficus trees on that corner, on the one corner in Alma going up to Glen Oaks. They took those out 6 months ago or so. They were dirty, they had birds, everything else in them. And they since in the last 2 months replaced them, I guess, with the crepe myrtle. I don't really want to see the crepe myrtle continuing on there, because it sometimes applies more or less to Alma, not really to Glen Oaks. Everything on Glen Oaks is all those palm trees. So I would recommend trying to develop that theme versus going to a crepe myrtle for this one little block. So that would be my comment. So consider that, okay?
I think we're at University of also Public Works. So.
Yeah, I know, but
I understand.
I heard some inclination they just put some 2 trees there. I think those are sort of an afterthought that they were there in Alma. They just continued it on. So
The question was whether they had designated that as a particular tree they were going to.
whatever. This is my comment. So
That's great.
okay.
Thank you, sir. Right. I'm ready to close this, and we have no more questions?
I have no more questions.
Okay. All right. I'll close the public hearing. All right. Sign code, how do we want to do this? Any additional conditions or comments?
I got a couple of thoughts. going through the package, it seems as though the way the signage is depicted on page 2, which is the green leaf signage that's located above this horizontal band, which also is depicted in sheet T1, which matches this Glenbrook's theme in the rendering, seems to work well with the architecture, whereas to have the opportunity to have it both above and on or below, it starts to get busy, like that one building, and I think I know what you're talking about. It's on the northwest corner
Yes.
of a corner, and it just seems really busy, and that's not the intent. But the way they've depicted it here, we have two choices. As you can see, even the diesel sign over here, even though it's mounted straight on, has a lot of positive aesthetic values as opposed to the Ann Taylor one. And they're both the same methodology, just different colors and shapes make a difference, you know. And so, whereas in the thicker style, the thicker font that's over here in the red style is just too busy and really takes away from the architecture. It just draws you right in and you forget about everything else. Now, it's probably the best thing that the retailer would want, but at the same time, you have 4 of these in a row, it's all going to look the same anyway. And so I think the way they've reverse lit the ones on the stucco area are positive, and I think it's nice when the two fonts are juxtaposed next to one another, so you have kind of the more plain bakery, and then the Paris is more of a ornate font, whatever that is. I don't know enough about fonts to call it out without having the manual in front of me, but I could say that this language seems to work better with this contemporary architecture where there is different size and a different font. One is more block and one is more, well, whatever that is, whatever that.
Serif.
I'm sorry, serif?
Yeah, that's a serif font. The Paris, the word Paris is serif, and bakery is sans serif.
Yeah.
Very good. And so
I do design layout, I know that fonts I can.
that's why we have a board.
There you go.
And so that I think works. Having this green leaf type of a sign as depicted in T1 seems to work. Now, if the board thinks that we should put them in the middle, then maybe they should all be in the middle. Those two.
Well, I think it also depends on, for instance, the blue doesn't read near as well as the red. The color's going to make a difference, and the size is going to make a difference, and if it's a small name, 4 or 5 letters as opposed to several words,
Like the Ann Taylor.
that's going to make a difference.
And so those were 2 comments. As far as the parking sign, I think the one on the east side of the facade is designed nicely. The way they have it laid out and the way it works, I don't think it's too intrusive into the neighborhood, and it does the job, because the idea is to get people around the corner and know where the parking is. The signage at the rear is depicted in elevation up here. We need to be mindful that there's residential tenants right over here. And I think that's something that we need to think about, of how we address this in the evening hours.
Well, if they're not lit, I think
Then we have nothing to worry
and
about.
I think that was one of the conditions that was in here already, because that was something I was concerned with too, and it is.
And they, haven't indicated the size on T1 of how big this should be. But at the same time, it's hard to tell what size it's going to be, because different retailers have different thoughts anyways.
Right.
So, but maybe a range where we could say not to exceed whatever.
250 square feet, that's the range, whatever you can fit into your 250 square feet.
Right, with a maximum height, let's say,
Right.
whatever that height is. But overall, I think the signage does work. It's designed well. Some of the conditions, if not all of the conditions, are a good idea. And we could go through them one by one again. But I think we just got to maybe give some direction on if we want it on top or in the center, and also if we want to have this kind of...
I think if they were on top where that canopy is on the right-hand side, it's going to be more difficult to read because they're up in where it's more shadowed.
These ones.
Right, as opposed to where the book one is.
As opposed to the prominent Glen Brooks one at the
And
corner.
that's against the flush building.
So an idea is on these two, because of the high bar, we could place those in the middle.
Or down, but I'm just saying you're going to create a shadow.
Or down. We could do it underneath it. They have some examples of that as well. So those could be underneath, and then the rest could be up top. But at least we're giving them some sort of a guideline where it's adaptable over time, and they don't have to keep coming back over small items.
I would agree with that, as well as not having that, the bright red one being a bold, that we don't have any bold sign faces.
Okay.
And that particular, the theme they have going with those fonts is acceptable to me.
It's all going to end up being whatever the retail
He's
is.
questioning this.
The challenge that staff is having is that there's, what is drawn is not defined very well. And so the sign program and its text really allows anything, essentially. The drawings indicate a very particular style and design. So what we'll need to do in order to have a sign program that really acts as a sign program, if it's approved tonight, is to write in text what you think you're seeing on the drawings, because the text of the sign program would actually allow pretty much any kind of sign. So if there are no restrictions on the actual fonts, except for it shouldn't be a bold font, then we could include that. If there's, because reverse channel letters, for example, are shown on the drawings, that's not included in the text of the sign program. So we would have to say, signs shall be reverse channel letters. That's why we're not trying to be difficult. It's just that there's a disparity between what's drawn and what's written.
Okay. Well, let's thought on this. We could go over the conditions, and we could try to prescribe what the intention is. And at that point, they could, when they're bringing in the colors, to also bring a holistic sign program that's more articulated and more holistic as far as their intention is concerned to staff. And that way, we've at least addressed it, but then we look at it one more time to make sure it's appropriate.
So it's coming to staff as opposed to...
Well, we're an extension of staff, so if it comes to you guys, staff, it's really the same thing. It will come to staff, but...
Well, we appreciate that compliment. Thank you very much.
Staff will look at it to make sure the intention is there.
Okay.
Okay, so should we go over the conditions, and then we'll add our own conditions as well?
Yeah, look, Colin?
You want me to read through the conditions again?
Well, we could thumb through it real quickly. So number 8 is going to be thought out when they come back, because the staff has been pretty clear with the comments that have been made that we needed more specific, so it's adaptable in the future, but at the same time, it provides direction. Number 9, we've already discussed that as well, that we, in addition to the general square footage of the signs, we would need some sort of a height, maximum height on them as well.
Do you have a sense of what that maximum height should be?
250 square foot seems like a lot.
Well,
because what is shown on the drawings is, fairly modest sign sizes by what we've seen, and the
Between that metal and that horizontal piece?
I think the architect would have to answer that, because we didn't find any dimensions.
The question was, this distance between
You have to state your name for the record, if
the
you would.
aluminum and then the bar that goes across the top is approximately 12 inches, 15 inches?
Yes, again, the name is John Poindexter with Envirotecture, 3600 Wilshire Boulevard. Your question is, what's the dimension between the top of the metal beam and the mullion?
Sign at this point.
That's approximately 18 inches.
I wouldn't think we would want to exceed that.
We don't want to exceed that, because then that would work. In fact, if it was just under that, if that's the dimension they're keeping, it wouldn't get in the way of the horizontal
If we said
storefront.
15 inches, we could work with that. 16. Okay, we're on 16.
Since you asked, we came up with a number, 16.
Okay.
So number 10, that's windows and door signs should be minimized.
But we need a size for that.
Isn't that, I read that as minimized being, let's keep those to a minimum as opposed to a size.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that?
Yeah, and we put that in because in the past, there have been some more limiting restrictions on door signage. A lot of times, doors have important information like business hours and, very particular small logos. So we wanted, again, to keep it flexible enough, but to state an intent about what goes on this very clean elevation.
Is the intent not to have it energized, not to have it...
Not to have the doors, because the doors are shown as, glazed, not to have a lot of advertising signage on these glass doors, but to keep it to, business hours, limited information, so that the design doesn't get cluttered.
Okay, so
If you wanted to put a maximum height on the letters of those letters,
So window and door signs should be minimized to pertinent business information such as hours of operation, et cetera, as opposed to illuminated signs.
right.
That's
We
the-
can.
Would those be in a color or just plain?
We'd like it to be flexible, because sometimes, businesses do have a logo that they put on. We want to be a little bit flexible, but to say, signage on entries should be minimized to specific business information and should not be lit, I think gives them enough flexibility and makes the intention of not cluttering up the design.
Yeah, multiple colors,
So number 11, font should be addressed in the sign program. So we discussed that in the stucco areas, correct? Well,
Right, you like to have I would
what's
be...
the general take on it?
Well, maybe no script. We say
Sans serif.
from serif and
Serif,
sans serif.
what are you trying to
No
avoid?
script.
What are you trying to avoid? Because personally, my thought was, hey, you know what? We're picking out of the pepper here. It's like the font is going to be the tenant. They're either going to have a national font, which blows us out of the water already, or, I guess, because I think of the building down at Western, where I remember on the sign program, we limited it to sans serif fonts in 2 different colors. And to be honest, now that I'm looking at it, it is a little boring, because all the signs are the same along it. After looking at this thing, a little bit of variation, they're. So I'm tending to lean on the side of a little less specific than more.
Let's see script on this.
Yeah, I will. But though, if it's a hairstylist who has, Don Dior, script font or something, I don't think you'll have to move to Burbank. I don't know. I'm of a little bit of the less, but I'll defer back to you. Should want to do it.
Okay, should we ask the applicant to come back with a thought, an idea, and direction of what they would prefer, to give them the flexibility that they need, and then staff could comment on it?
I actually had a thought, at some point in this process, and hopefully, I'm sure for Mr. Manukian, sooner rather than later, he's going to want to book some tenants. And then maybe it's worth waiting until at least then you have, here's a concrete tenant, here's what they would like to preserve. I mean, I don't know if we want to put it off to...
Well, he's probably going to want to get his DRB approval to move on to plan check.
Yeah, we would discourage that. In the past, sign programs have actually included very specific signs and very specific tenants, and it's not the way a sign program should function.
Okay. To be broader.
Right. So if you wanted to say limit, since you've now limited the color, limited the height, maybe you want to limit the type of sign and leave font and color flexible for, so there's some flexibility and some consistency.
Right.
That's fair.
Does that work for you? Is that what?
Yes.
I'm looking at the other ones, the color, we have a color palette in here. We for fonts, you could say something, we prefer serif or sans serif fonts, as opposed to saying no script font.
As a suggestion, the architect's done a good job designing the building, so what we could do is, he's got to come back with the colors anyways. So we could add, now I think they got a general direction of what we're looking for in the specifics. So they could come back with more of a revised signage program that addresses our thoughts, but comes up with specific choices that a tenant could pick from. It's either this type or this type or this type, let's say. And that way you're giving your client and everybody else flexibility, and at the same time, staff has an opportunity to make sure that it's that it works with the design as presented, and it doesn't become too overbearing, and it actually is complementary.
So are you saying the sign program will come back to the board?
No.
Okay, so that's why we're asking for it. We're going to continue to ask you guys questions.
It's difficult to prescribe everything without asking you to come back to our board, because our preference would be come up with your choices and then come back to our board, and then we'll tell you if we like it or not and what the thought process is. Staff is indicating it's better it goes to staff. We have no issues with that, and for it to go to staff, it's difficult for us to prescribe everything without having choices for them. So I'm suggesting the architects and the design team come up with specific choices of what works for them, color-wise, font-wise, size-wise, and everything else. Size limited to 16 inches. But again, holistically, with the color scheme, and then comes once for the overall thing, and staff then decides and gives a thumbs up or makes recommendations.
Okay, I appreciate that. What I would recommend is, now we have the height, so I'm going to ask you just a few more questions so that staff then feels comfortable, because this is one of the most challenging issues that staff will face in working with an applicant. What we've heard is that a variety of fonts is okay. There is a challenge in regards to script, but we're hearing that flexibility in fonts, it's maybe okay for the sign program to be silent on that. We heard 16-inch limited height, and then they're limited to the square footage and so forth. They may have multiple words at 16 inches in height. None of that is shown. So if they have multiple words for a sign, we're assuming that those are all horizontally placed rather than vertically placed, because that's what the design shows.
The only place is vertical is the parking sign.
Right. So all the signs should be horizontally placed, with the exception of the parking sign. We heard a discussion about how the signage is placed on the bars, but then it sounded like...
We were going to get to that at the end.
Okay.
So we're trying to go through your conditions.
Oh, I see.
8 to 14, and then add the additional ones.
Got it. So I may interject later.
Yeah, I mean...
So Okay, so we were at number 11, funds should be addressed in the sign program, and they're gonna, they're gonna come back with specific choices that a tenant would pick from.
Okay.
No can signs shall be allowed.
Okay.
The proposed wall signs at the rear of the building shall not be eliminated. We're on board. Provide a color palette for approval by staff. And again, that's very important for them to come back in because the building colors aren't worked out yet, and that's why we need it to come back holistically.
Right.
Okay? So that completes staff's conditions.
And what would you like to add?
We're talking about where they go on.
Where they go on the
So
staff.
one, Ms. Palmer had suggested that the higher signs that are at the, that they would be placed either beneath it, beneath the bars, right? Or in the middle as depicted, and everything else we would decide what to go above. So if we, first we could maybe decide this, and then we'll get to this.
So what do you do with, I understand, so that's above, below, Ron, what about these, those two?
Those would be,
There's a third one, too, that's a little
those
tough.
could either be
Oh, no.
like Glenbrook's or similar to the higher ones, but the higher ones certainly need to come farther down.
Right.
And so what we could do is say the signage that are placed in,
I think what we want to say that we shouldn't have are signs in the glass area should not be above and below, like somebody may have a...
Yes.
Later.
because the ones that are, the ones with the higher brows are unit B as in boy and D as in David. That's what these are.
Is that those two? Yeah.
B and D. So they should be lower. So B and suites B and D should have signs underneath the aluminum bars.
You know, it's kind of interesting. I'm looking at the signage elevations, the piece that we just got today, and it's totally different than that. Like, they're all basically in one line, but up and down on those things. So,
I don't think that's correct.
yeah, well, like most of them are in line, but except for B.
Well, the good news is the horizontal aluminum band are in line with this perspective that we have with the rendering. And so we could go off of the rendering and give staff direction. And so the question is then on A, C, and E. No, it's A, C, and D.
Actually, I have an extra sign on that, too.
Yeah.
There's not that many signs for you.
Correct. There's 4 suites, but 5 signs over here. That's what's throwing
Yeah, that's what's throwing you off. Right. That's why, I mean... here-
Correct. Whereas in the signage doesn't have it on the last one.
Right.
Because A is a double space, double width. So A and C, Mr. Collin, A and C are the ones with the higher horizontal bands that should have the signage placed below them.
Okay.
And B and D could match E, or they could be on their own. Perhaps it makes sense for it to be more copacetic and for them all to be above.
If they put E and D above, it's going to make the lines, signs look like they're all
Almost on the
above.
same
Which
line.
is exactly what they've done here.
Does that look funny to have a little variation as opposed to the way they have it shown on the record?
It's, what I think is successful is having them on a line. So these, it would work well, and then we do something different with E, and E could be above it as well, but
It's a different situation.
Right,
it's a
because it's
different
totally set up,
situation.
right.
So this end of the building, which is its own massing anyways, has some sort of continuity, and of course, they're going to have different sizes, different fonts, different colors, in which case that will create the variety anyways. And so if we go below...
B and
on-
D are above,
Yes,
A and C
A
below.
and C are below.
below. That works.
So it should be consistent with the elevation that they provided.
Yes.
The question that I have for you then is, would you suggest that B and D are at the same elevation and C and A are at the same elevation, because right now, they're all a little bit off.
All a little bit different. Yeah, I would, some continuity of that would help, I would think.
Okay, so we'll say, and the
Oh.
sign,
As I say that, again, whatever the tenant, once you start seeing what the logos and what they're trying to do,
They're never going to be the same.
they're never going to be the same. But it probably would be better to start with them at least
but the aluminum bars that they're
fixed. To.
fixed to for B and D should be at the same height, and A and C should be at the same height. And then the location that E is affixed to is really on top of that element above the doors. So we know essentially where that is. We're not really sure where A, B, C, and D are, but wherever they are, B and D should be the same, and A and C should also match in their height.
Right, and when it's all said and done, they're going to be pretty close to one another.
Right.
Okay. Which leaves us to the solid mass at the corner. The way they've done this seems to work.
Yes, that works for me.
The parking with the details works as well, and we've already discussed the rear.
So basically, those signs on the last unit are centered within that solid area.
These, correct? Yes.
They're not at the low end or the high end.
Centered.
They're centered.
Okay, so the signs on the stucco wall are centered in the solid portion of the wall.
Well, the top, it's almost like the top line is centered, and then we have the smaller one.
But it's basically centered. It's not
Again,
higher or low.
you don't know what the logo is.
Fair enough, centered.
Centered, or you could say the top is justified or the bottom is justified, but roughly they should be centered
Well,
on
centered
the
is a
wall.
good idea, just because
Okay.
then it won't crowd the architecture, it won't come too close to the
Okay.
storefront, which is what we're trying to do.
So that gives us enough direction. And then, did you want to talk about the sign type?
Meaning type as in a,
Reverse channel letters, would you allow,
It was already discussed that the ones on the solid planes are going to be reverse lit,
Okay.
reverse channel lit.
reverse channel letters?
The ones that are on the storefront wont there's glass behind them would not be reversed.
Would be lit with a plexiglass face, internally illuminated with a plexiglass face.
Correct. And they would
Right.
come up with some choices of exact detail of what that is.
There is a sign that, the green leaf sign that's shown is the reverse channel letter with a color behind. So that would be allowed as well, I'm hearing, because there was positive comment
positive,
on
but-
that.
But that's not really a true reverse channel sign, is it?
Primarily because that's lacking.
Okay, so we're saying on the glass, there are no reverse channel letters, and I'm just wanting to provide the
I
applicant
understand.
with
Let me ask
some...
you a question, if
yeah.
I may. And you might, Mr. Poindexter, might need to come up for this. I need to open.
oh, yes.
As depicted in T1, this
Yeah.
type of a sign that we're proposing to be placed on suites A to E
Correct,
with glass behind them,
that's right.
are you envisioning, or can you provide a detail where they're reverse lit, but it's solid in the rear of some sort, where the light's not going inside the space?
If you look on the, immediately adjacent to that, that there is an indication in our
Yes.
conversation with the sign designer.
This one.
It was not intended to have that reverse channel letter on top of the horizontal beam. So it was not, that was not the design intent.
Okay. So you're going to come back with choices of what is the design
Yes.
intent?
We can certainly take all of these comments and come back with a modification and show staff.
Well, that's the whole idea of today, because there was a lot of different ideas, a lot of different presentation that came into place, both with signage in the building, and I think we've done a good job. indicating what this board thinks is appropriate and what was successful. Overall, the building was successful, so now we'll just need some more comments on this that you could work with staff on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Close the meeting.
There is one comment I'd like to make real quick. I gave you some incorrect information regarding the height of the distance from the that of the horizontal bar to the mullion. It's not 18 inches, it's actually 24 inches. So that may make a difference in terms of the maximum height of a sign. You may want to...
Say 18.
You know what, that was a comment I was going to make, because we agreed kind of on the street sign, or the dress sign is an 18-inch high sign. And
So it'll be copacetic.
Yeah.
18.
18 inch. Thank you. All right. Now I'm really going to close it.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
So,
So are we going to vote on the building except for the colors?
well,
I'm
both
not
the
sure.
building and the signage have specific conditions. In regards to the building, the applicant needs to come back with a complete material board and work with staff. In regards to the signage, we just discussed some specific conditions as well.
We don't vote at all?
Yeah,
No.
so we could maybe vote on them, I guess, together, right?
We could do, yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't did we vote on the last ones?
What we'd like to do, because there's been a lot of discussion, and even as we were working out the conditions for the building, there was a lot of discussion. What we'd like to do is take, let's see, it's 7:51. We'd like to take roughly 5 or 7 minutes to work out the conditions and read them back to you, so that because I know you guys have spent a long time trying to get it so that it can come back to staff, and we want to make sure we get it right.
But we've already reread them once. You read,
If
we,
5 minutes.
Give her.
all right.
Okay, thank you.
So you want to take 5 minutes to your work? Okay.
Yes.
So we'll take a recess for 5 minutes?
Okay.
All right. Okay.
We're not on yet.
Well, or we could do in one, and if we do it all, would you?
Okay. We're
back.
on again.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Wright?
Thank you very much for allowing us the time to hopefully get all our conditions straight. On the architectural conditions, we have condition number 1, submit lighting details for review and approval by staff prior to plan check submittal. This includes lighting for passageway, which I think we looked at and you guys were very happy with. Landscape and building exterior. I also have that downlights in that overhead canopy are acceptable as long as they're very subtle. Then we're striking condition number 2, which talks about landscaping, and condition number 3 that was focused on the parkway landscaping. And I'm going to just go through the staff conditions, and we'll reorder them in the actual letter of decision. Submit an updated landscaping plan with drought-tolerant palette of trees and plants. Will include the paving for the driveway leading to the subterranean garage. We'll strike that, and that should be decorative. And there wasn't a request for any permeable paving at all because it's such a small area. The driveway to the subterranean garage could be decorative. Is that a could be or should be? Do we care very much about it? Okay. Could be. All planners shall utilize bubblers or drip irrigation in an effort to minimize water consumption. And then we also have provide a color and material palette to be reviewed and approved by staff. Consider matte travertine or other stone rather than polished travertine. On the colors, the green should be a bit darker and work together with the overall color palette. Consider bronze anodized for the storefront. So those are the color and material conditions that we have. Cut back planter at the southeast corner to prevent a hazard. Upper planter may need to be a bit wider. Potentially use a windmill palm in the upper planter due to the narrowness. Did I have that correct?
Right.
Windmill palm?
Talked about both those planters at each wing to be foreshortened to accommodate cars. The one
I think it's only the lower planter that is extending.
Back this part.
Yeah.
Both of them. On each side.
Oh, one on the other side by the driveway.
Right, you've got two.
Okay. Okay, so pull back from the alley, so pull them north.
Correct. Stretch.
Because my understanding is that the taller planter is close enough to the building that it
Just
wouldn't be a
the
traffic
base of the
hazard.
planter is too far out.
And it's kind of nice to have the double height, a
Right.
lower one and a higher one, so the same motif.
Oh, I see. To pull both the upper and the lower planter back so that they have, I see. Okay. Thank you. And did I get the windmill palm? Is that correct? Okay. Let's see. Carefully consider lighting at the rear. We'll make sure we add that to that upper condition. Work with Public Works to provide landscaping in Parkway that complements the building. Provide street tree that is consistent with other trees on Glen Oaks Boulevard. Street tree consistency is a priority. A canopy tree would be beneficial.
Okay, I mean, just have to deal with what Public Works.
Right. If it's a crepe myrtle, the color should complement the building, and staff and applicant will work with Public Works on that. And recommendation for signage what I have is recommend signage for deliveries, so hours for deliveries at the parking, so alley is not blocked.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I have on the building.
That was wonderful.
You know, I went back to consideration of providing a contact for the neighbors or somebody. And I remember when on the Disney project that when I was on, we approved, that was something that actually conditioned that. But I would just,
Okay, so I'm going to read that into the record and make sure that it's an appropriate place. I just want to double check. Provide a contact provide a contact during construction for concerns and complaints.
from the neighbors.
Okay. So do we want to vote on them separately, or are we voting on them together?
We could do them both. If you read the next one, we could do it all in one.
You could do it however you like.
Okay, let's do them
Keep
together.
moving.
Okay.
Do the next.
For the sign program, reverse channel lettering shall be used for wall signs on the stucco portions of the building. Signage in these areas should be centered in the solid portion of the wall. Provide a variety of font choices for approval by staff. I think I jumped the gun because I should be reading the staff conditions also. The text of the sign program should be revised to more properly reflect the design shown on the plans. Window and door signs should be minimized to provide business information. No lit signs on the windows and doors will be allowed. Let's see. The proposed wall signs at the rear of the building shall not be illuminated. And then we have maximum height of the signage shall be, I'm putting in 20 inches because the applicant corrected that spacing when you had asked how big is that spacing shown. I can't read it. But yeah.
Is it still
18? He said it's 24. Originally, you said it's 18, so you said 16.
24.
And we went to 18. Right.
Okay, so it's 24, so you want it to be, the maximum to be 18 inches. Very good. And then there's the placement of the signs. Signs A and C, as shown on the north elevation, shall be below the aluminum bar and at the same height as each other. Signs D and B shall be above the aluminum bar and at the same height as each other. We've got, I think I'm repeating myself, signage at the rear as depicted in the elevations is okay and should not be lit. I'm going to also add, I'm not sure I heard exactly this from you, signage shall have individual letters. No can signs accepting national logos are acceptable.
Except national.
No can signs accepting national logo signs. Right. And then provide a color palette for approval by staff.
One more thing was Suite E was above the aluminum band as well.
Right.
The corner one.
No, the corner one's F. This is E.
Right.
That is E?
That's E. That's F.
Well, this is kind of corner one, corner two, but yes.
Okay.
E.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're talking about E.
This one.
This one's above, yeah.
Right. Okay.
And any concern about the horizontal placement? Can it move along that bar?
I don't get it.
Yeah, that's what we think too. Okay.
Okay. I think we got it all.
I move that we approve based on the conditions.
I second.
All right.
This will be roll call. Ms. Palmer, Mr. Simonian,
Yes.
Chairman Ellis.
Aye.
Approval on a 3-0 vote. Thank you, with conditions.
Thank you.
We have minutes.
All right, we have one set of minutes to approve this evening. It's the May 31st, 2012.
I move that we approve those minutes.
From our last meeting. There's a motion to approve. Is there a
Okay.
second?
Second.
A motion to approve the minutes of May 31st of this year were made. Roll call, Ms. Palmer. Mr. Simonian?
Yes.
Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Great, motion carries 3-0.
I move that we adjourn.
We'll see you in a few weeks.
I think Roger may have the date for the next meeting.
The date for the next meeting is the 26th of July.
July.
Oh, so it's different than this. Is that?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking at Board 2.
Is that? Oh, you're right. It would be.
It's April, or it's August 9th.
8-9.
Yes.
Could be April.
It could be April. Yeah. Okay. This is correct. Okay. Great.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.